October 14th meeting of the Prudential Committee to order. I'd like to thank Hiawatha for hosting us and for the fabulous showing again. We appreciate it. And first up on the agenda is visitors and staff to be heard. I know, Frank Puleo, you had something to say, if you'd like to address it. You can join us here so you can, so the microphone catches you. Yep, it's Frank Puleo, Puleo. EO.
Is this for me?
It's on.
Okay.
It should catch you.
Okay, thank you. My name's Frank Puleo. I reside in Essex Junction, and I currently have 2 children enrolled in Essex Junction schools. 2 have graduated and now in college and moved on, so I still have 2 enrolled in the schools. But thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak today. I sent an email. I'm following up on an email that I sent to the board and to the superintendent and other folks, the principals. So thank you for the response. The first thing I want to go over is, I did receive the board's response to my email, and I want to talk about school safety, but more in particular, locking the school entrance doors. I did receive a response from Mr. Nova, and it's a very, couple paragraph response.
I apologize for interrupting. None of us can really hear what you're talking about back here.
Oh.
We do have an in-house microphone that we could use. I don't know if that's going to mess up the sound system.
Is this?
Sure. Get it.
That would be great.
That's only for RETN. I don't think that doesn't help everybody else here. The mass is good.
Thank you, Tom.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
Thank you.
Second.
Sorry, I guess I should repeat what I just said then. Thank you for allowing me to speak today. I'm just here to follow up on an email that I sent to the Prudential Committee and to some of the principals, so the principals in the school system. I have 2 children currently enrolled in Essex Junction schools, and 2 have graduated and moved on. I sent an email to the board about a month and a half ago outlining what I thought was a concern, a safety concern, and I heard that the school entrance doors were not locked. Sorry. And I received a response from the board inviting me here to talk about it, but I also received a response from Mr. Nova, the superintendent, that outlined some of the procedures and processes in place today. And I don't need to read the whole thing, but I would like to summarize some portions of that. So just so everybody has an understanding of where we are today with school safety, if you don't mind. Dear Mr. Puleo, thank you for passing along your suggestion regarding locking all our school doors during school hours. This idea has been discussed by our school boards in the past, and they have decided not to take this action. However, all exterior doors, with the exception of the main doors, are locked during school hours. An additional safety measure has been the installation of security cameras in our schools, so we can see individuals as they approach the main entrance. Schools are also equipped with a remote locking mechanism, so a designated office person can remotely lock the main entrance if there is some type of threat. In addition, all of our schools are E91 compliant, so emergency responders know the exact location of a call, including the specific room within a school. All of our school personnel are trained and required emergency secure the school procedures. All of our schools conduct monthly emergency drills, which in many cases are observed by emergency responders. Representatives from our schools attend monthly school public safety meetings with emergency responders to foster a close working relationship. Security staff and various personnel are equipped with 2-way radios, which are monitored at all schools. These investments have been made in place of locking the main entrances. While an action such as locking the main entrance may appear to be a simple solution, there are many complications that can arise, such as the person assigned may not be comfortable with the responsibility of determining who should be allowed access and why. A guardian who is not recognized by the assigned person may end up waiting outside in poor weather while the database is accessed to ensure they are actually a guardian. And a new delivery person may need to wait until the assigned person can contact the employer to confirm their identity. Rest assured, we do take the safety of students, families, and our staff very seriously, and this specific action is one that we've decided to approach with several safety measures rather than locking the main entrance doors. Thank you for this letter, and I agree wholeheartedly that the first part of this letter is good, sound, solid investments in our security of our children and for the staff that work at the schools. I also should have mentioned that I am a law enforcement officer. I'm not here representing my department or my agency or anything. I'm here as a parent representing children in the schools. But as I said, when I read this, these are all great measures that have taken place. When I read the second paragraph of why the front doors have not been locked, the first thing that came to mind was, someone doesn't want to make a decision of who should come in, who should not come in. Well, that can easily, in my opinion, be overcome with a few hours of training. A few hours of training dedicated to those people that make those decisions on who should be allowed access and who should not be allowed access is very easily overcome. It's not an obstacle that can't be overcome. The second thing I read into that is the inconvenience factor of someone having to wait outside in cold, or someone have to be questioned of who they are, if they're a guardian or not, or if they're a delivery person or they're not a delivery person. Those are inconveniences where we are in today's day and climate of what's going on in the country with gun control and gun violence. To me, those inconveniences, again, can be overcome very easily with, I'll get into what my suggestions would be in just a minute. But those are mere inconveniences. When we travel, when we go to the airport, there's inconveniences for travel. We all have to go through screening, and we have to go through those screening if we want to board a plane. It's built into the process. You expect that. If someone approaches our schools and we don't know who they are, in my opinion, they shouldn't be allowed access to the school until we know who you are. And if they're inconvenienced a few minutes in the cold, or if a delivery person shows up and we don't know who they are, then I see no problem with that type of challenge, to challenge who they are. The problems with this current process, by having an internal locking mechanical device that locks the doors if you see a threat, like the current process has, the problem with that is, one, it doesn't guarantee that someone's going to walk in. It requires constant monitoring. If you take your eyes off that camera for a second, someone could walk right through. If the person that's assigned to watch the front door entrance gets distracted, has to go to the bathrooms on the call, they can't watch. But more importantly, the most important thing is, this process protects you against a visible threat. That means someone's walking up to the school with a visible weapon, a visible gun, a visible rifle like the Newtown. You see it, you can respond to it and lock the doors. But what if it's in the wintertime and someone has something underneath a coat, or they just have a handgun instead of a long rifle, and it's concealed on their persons? This process does not address that. Someone's going to walk right into the school and do whatever they wanted to do without being challenged. And especially if someone's even thinking about this in a harm's way and knows what our processes are, and it's advertised that our schools' doors are not locked and they're just monitoring, they can conceal whatever they wanted to do, and they're going to gain access. When I read school notes, come home and, for lack of a better term, outlines exactly what our processes are. If someone wants to do something in harm's way, it's right there in black and white, accessible on the web and in print. Right after I sent this email, like within a week, and I didn't know this was happening, I saw an article in the Free Press, and I also saw it on the news, what Colchester was doing. And the article made it sound like they were implementing this process by October 1st. all greeters, if you want to enter a Colchester school, you have to be buzzed in. And if you're seen on a camera, I'm going by what I read in the paper. I've not independently verified this, and I saw it on the news. But all their doors are locked. And the quote in the paper was one of the best quotes I've seen in a long time, where, they have a process where it's called universal denial, meaning you are denied entry into our schools unless we know who you are. I thought that was the best term I've read in the paper this year. And the other thing, the next step, which that might not be addressed at this meeting, but maybe a future meeting, is what they're also doing in Colchester is they're having armed officers on site, which I don't want to get into that now because that goes beyond what I wanted to accomplish today of addressing the need to lock the doors. Why lock the doors? Because what it does is what I talked about, it prevents a non-visible threat, a stranger just walking in here, and it slows down intruders. You can't just walk in. What happened in Newtown is I don't have all the facts, but he shot his way in. But what those shots did is allowed somebody, at least the reaction time, to hear the shots. If there was no locked doors, he would have committed chaos before he was even detected. He would have walked right in. At least they had the announcement, heard the shots, and were able to call 911. So it delays a would-be intruder. And it controls access. You know who's coming in at all times. What I've learned from my counterparts across the country and just reading the paper and looking on the internet is there's a lot of schools that are implementing full-time police school resource officers, full-time presence at the schools. I know that's for another meeting. I know that involves resources and commitment. The other things I want to throw out a few more things and I'll be done. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I just wanted something to talk about. Other things that schools are doing, they're installing bulletproof glass at the entrances of the schools. I had to interview and talk to a school teacher in the northern part of the state of Vermont. Had nothing to do with what this was about. She was a witness to something. I just went to talk to her. She told me to come through the side door. And I just said, can I ask why? She said, yes, they were installing bulletproof glass at the entrances. That's right here in Vermont. Some schools are arming their teachers, armed security officers, armed police officers. One school is actually, I only verified this for one school, is actually buying bulletproof whiteboards in their classroom, the small portable ones. So in the event of a threat, they at least have something to hide that will stop a bullet. And the other things that I read about, two more items that, if resources are an issue, and bringing police officers in and putting them in the schools, it's a cost, and we all know that. We're talking about our kids here, so that has to be factored into the cost factor. But what some schools have done is they've actually had offices within the schools that allow police officers to come in and do their paperwork. So they can roll right up to the school, park their police cruiser, and there's a presence there. They're in there, instead of being at the police department doing their paperwork, and I know that involves getting the police departments involved, have the police officers come to the schools and do their paperwork, have a dedicated office or a cubicle. And other schools have done is they've had police cruisers just park in their parking lot and do their paperwork in their car. Most of it's on the computer anyway, typing reports. They're actually sitting in the school lots. I don't have anything else. I could go on for a few items more, but I won't. But thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And as I explained at the end of our meeting, when we discuss our future agenda items, we'll discuss as a board in front of everyone where we'd like to go with that. And we really appreciate your time and showing up at this meeting. It's important and always worth looking at. Yep.
Charlie, can I ask Judy one question?
Sure.
Before Frank leaves? The safety committee that I was, many, many years ago, I was on one of those village and the safety and that committee that operates now are parental Are there parental?
The safety committee?
Yeah, do we have any parents on that safety committee?
You talking about the school public safety committee?
Yeah, when you have those, isn't there still a safety committee, like when you get together with the Essex Police?
Right.
It's called the School Public Safety Committee, and it's chaired between the Essex Police Department and Essex Rescue.
They're first
And I think they're open
responders
meetings.
primarily, and school personnel.
And they're open meetings, are they not? So if you're not on the committee. So we'll make sure we get that information to you, Frank. Although, was it in your reply?
I think,
I think it was in, might have been one of our replies, but I'll make sure I get it to you as well.
I am aware of those meetings.
Oh, you are? Okay. Okay. Thank you. Anyone else, visitors to be heard? And can we make sure that everyone's signed in, by the way, so we have the list? Thank you. All right, principal reports. Mr. Bochansky, you're up.
That's okay. So in lieu of the monthly principal report, can everyone hear me without that? In lieu of the monthly principal report, I put together a Google presentation that I'll share with the board. I think I have 25 minutes.
Okay.
So I'm looking at the clock. It says 10:04,
You're
so
fine.
we finish at 4:15. So what I like to do, and actually, can you guys hear me? Is that okay? So what I like to do is have our faculty introduce themselves to you and share the number of years that they've been here at Hiawatha. We also have a UVM student teacher, and I'm doing this because it's not just about me as a principal sharing a report. It's really about the amazing work that all of these professionals and paraprofessionals and student teachers do on a daily basis to make it work for kids. So I'll start to model. My name is Tom Bochansky. I've been here this is my 15th year. Christine? Stand up.
I'm Christine Elias, I'm a speech and language pathologist here, and I've been here for 11 years.
My name is Liz Wolf, and I'm a learning specialist.
I'm Kim Desjardins, and I've been here for a few months. It's my first year here at Hiawatha as the art teacher.
I'm Kathy Lawrence, I'm the librarian here, and this is my 13th year.
I'm Lori Riddell. I'm the early childhood special educator for our early ed program here at Hiawatha. I have been in and out of Hiawatha since 1985.
I'm Ann Venturo, I'm a learning specialist, and this is my 8th year.
I'm Karen Seaman, kindergarten teacher. This is my 9th year.
I'm Chrissy Frankenhoff, I teach 2nd grade, and this is my 17th year.
Marcy Morgan, first grade, 10th year. Alice Weston, I'm a learning specialist. This is my 12th year at Hiawatha. Kayla Johnson, I'm the ELL teacher. This is my first year.
I'm Sean Martell, I'm a 3rd grade teacher, and this is my 2nd year.
Hi, I'm Kate Lucas. This is my first year. I am a 3rd grade long-term substitute as well as a paraprofessional.
I'm Colleen Stevens, I'm a kindergarten teacher, and I've been here 18 years.
I'm Raina Marr, and I'm the school nurse, and I've been here officially 1 year.
I'm Danielle Novati, and I'm student teaching from UVM.
I'm Jessica Pepin, I teach 1st grade, and this is my 8th year.
I'm Karen Harvey. This is my 3rd year here stationed at Hiawatha.
I'm Kim McVeigh. I teach 2nd grade, and this is my 12th year here.
I'm Meredith Funtow. I'm 2nd grade, and I'd say probably in the district it's been 22 plus, maybe. Here it's been probably as long as you, that we've said 15, 16 years.
I'm Kaylee Cafano, and this is my 3rd year at Hiawatha, 1st year as a kindergarten teacher.
Thanks, everyone. So, I know we break those we write those monthly principal reports, and I know, they're highlights of what we do each month throughout the school year. And the work really could not be possible without this amazing faculty. There are some faculty members that are not here, and certainly our paraprofessional staff is not here this afternoon. But we could not accomplish this body of work without the amazing dedication and caring and goodwill that we all bring into the building. So I have a number of slides for this Google presentation. I'm not going to read every bullet. I will share this all with you after the presentation this afternoon, and so you can certainly go through it. If you have any follow-up questions or concern or what have you, do not hesitate to give me a shout, and we can connect vis-a-vis or via email or phone in terms of that follow-up piece. So these are just some events and accomplishments that have unfolded here at school so far this year. And I also want to add that Lori Riddell was named this summer as our CCSU, as actually the Chittenden County Building Bright Future Special Educator of the Year. So we have a couple of our faculty members who have been celebrated over these past several months. A lot of things going on. We had a group of teachers this summer, actually at the beginning of the summer, worked together on informing a presentation that Erin McGuire did at the Vermont Principals Association Leadership Conference. A lot of building work. Working with Bob Clifford, our child nutrition director, to really usher in a new era in terms of food service, what children are eating, and also how we're providing that service for kids. And our PTO working to welcome all of our new children at the beginning of the school year. First day of school is a big deal. I put that up there as an event because it really is the culmination of so much planning and organization and prep work over the previous spring months and over the summer months leading up to that big first day. We have a reinvigorated PTO, so we have a new slate of officers. Actually, our president is Rosalind Hunt, who's a physical education teacher over at Summit Street, and she's really working hard to really make the PTO a formidable presence here at school. So they have a lot of things going on, open house, field trips. Karen Reed, our music teacher, works very diligently in making performing arts a big part of what we do here at school. We decided a VSO ensemble here. Just finished the October kneecap assessment, also did a September literacy assessment. And we also work at the high school on a number of little mini projects, including hosting a number of child psychology students each semester. So some of this data is familiar to you as our Prudential Committee, as our school board. We had an all-time high of students this year in terms of our enrollment. I'm including our pre-kindergarten kids, our 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds, because as we've worked very hard to incorporate our 3- and 4-year-old program into our K-3 programming, it's become much more of a school program rather than a self-contained, isolated program. And so we have 252 children total. About 230 of those are K-3 students. It might actually be a little bit more. 32 of our kids are ELL. About 30 kids are receiving some fairly intensive services across the board. About a third of our kids are living in poverty, as measured by that federal benchmark. We have a number of homeless families that we're really struggling to support. And given last October's performance assessments, about 3/4 of our kids, on average, are proficient according to the NECAP reading and math standard. So the first 8 weeks of our school year has been it's been a race. And it's amazing to me that we're actually in our 8th calendar week of the school year. It's going by that quickly. And I certainly don't want to speak for everyone here at Hiawatha, but it's been a challenge. I think it's been a very, very challenging school year. And we're going to talk a little bit at the end of the presentation about maybe why those challenges are in place. But it's been a difficult go. And what I'm trying to do in this presentation is to demonstrate to you, our board, all the many, many things that we're trying to bring together and coalesce in terms of initiatives and projects, just the daily work of getting ready for a classroom full of children, and make it sensible and doable and digestible. So over these first 8 weeks, we've been working incredibly hard to establish classroom routines on the playground, in the dining hall, completing all manner of assessments. We are managing a lot of kids with significant behavioral issues. As your principal, understand that most of my day is consumed by managing discipline and student behavior. And we're doing it for the obvious reasons. We have a lot of kids this year who come in with fairly intensive needs, and in the mainstream class, those youngsters require a tremendous amount of support, a lot of planning, a lot of collaboration that takes a lot of time to do it in a meaningful way. We're seeing an increase in the number of our families moving into EJ with remarkable needs, mental health needs, families that are homeless. And even though that may sound like a small number that I shared on the previous slide, that's a big deal. And we're just seeing generally a more transient student population here in EJ. We're also doing some other things to support learning for all kids. We have a math and science volunteer program. We have one of our third graders who's actually taken coursework through Johns Hopkins Center for Talented Youth. I put that up there because it's not a little thing to set that up. It literally requires a lot of time and effort to get that going and get it integrated in the classroom in a way that's meaningful for that youngster. And then we actually finally had our school climate parent follow-up meeting, which was held a couple of weeks ago. We had a really good outcome from that meeting. For the next 8 weeks, it's not going to slow down, I'm sorry. Everyone, we all know that we have math program planning, given this transition that is underway in terms of moving away from the everyday math program, possibly. We are constantly working on our literacy program in terms of reading and writing and refining and revising in terms of making work for kids based on these new standards that have been promulgated. And the same thing with science and social studies. I was just attending a third grade planning meeting a few days ago, and the level of conversation, the breadth of conversation, and the depth of conversation around how to make science meaningful for kids in the classroom, in the third grade classroom, is really remarkable. But all that takes an incredible amount of time and resources. I don't know if any of you heard Commissioner Bill II recently speak to that on the state level. That fourth bullet, it's challenging. What we're trying to do with our schedule this year is make learning integrated and meaningful across all content areas, including special areas that we used to have kind of globbed together on a Friday. Is very, very difficult work. It's challenging work. And it's really requiring a tremendous effort from our staff, again, to make it real for kids. Trying to address and incorporate all those different content areas in the classroom where we know it makes the most difference for kids. Add on to that technology piece, and then again, other projects and initiatives that we have at the building level. Our readers program, we have that big little connection with the high school. Kathy and Maxine are currently planning for the book fair. And then of course we have this fairly remarkable school-wide event. It was actually started by Phyllis Palmer, who retired last spring, the hand-to-hand sale. Putting these up there really to try and demonstrate in a very upfront way that there's a lot that goes on at school. I'm actually amazed at what we're able to accomplish, given all the many things that we're addressing. Oh, there's another slide. We have a lot of kids with fairly remarkable behavior issues. I think every teacher in the school has 1, 2, or 3 kids that require a fairly significant level of behavioral programming. We just met with Kate Brayton, who's going to be working with us around the restorative justice program that we'd like to pilot here at the school. That came out of our school climate follow-up with parents a couple of weeks ago. And we're actually going to start by training our paraprofessionals first, who tend to be the front line out of recess, and work it back to our licensed staff. That's also something that's been discussed and organized within our Respectful Learning Place team, which is a school-based team of counselor, nurse, school services clinician, social worker, and myself. And so we meet on a weekly basis just to monitor how things are going in terms of school climate, school behavior. We are all working very diligently as individual teachers and teacher teams around our own supervision and evaluation performance goals. We do not have them firmed up yet. I know the deadline is tomorrow. Probably won't have it done by tomorrow, but certainly by the beginning of November, we'll have everything firmed up in terms of those targeted student performance measures. Last year, the grade level teams actually presented to you guys, to the board. We're continuing to transition Goldview for EST referrals, which is an online tool that has been used by special educators. We're going to work that into our EST practices, as has been done over at Sutton Fleming, I think AEL as well. Alice is going to talk very briefly at the end about a project that Alice and colleagues have organized and designed. We'll be implementing in a couple of weeks around wellness and the importance of physical exercise. Our third grade team is embarking on a homework project. And again, we're continuing to work with Cindy and Lori in terms of making that 3 to 4-year-old programming to K-Link a little more seamless. Actually, Lori Riddell and Cindy Papicello for the first year are actually sitting on our vertical learning specialist team, which I think is an important first step. I know that Amy, in a little bit, is going to talk about some curricular updates very quickly. Please know that our teachers are spending a remarkable amount of time on math, literacy, science, social studies, and also, when they can, which is a little bit of a bugaboo we're going to talk about, participating on the CCSU level teams, those CCSU vertical teams. Our teacher teams this year meet Tuesday through Friday, or at least try to meet Tuesday through Friday, and work on taking those Common Core standards and deriving lesson plans and unit plans based on those Common Core standards. It is an incredible body of work. I know that some of you may want to jump up and speak to that. I think it's been a source of frustration and exasperation. What I keep telling my faculty in a very supportive way is that we can't just do it in 1 year, that this is really 2-3 years in the making, and to take little chunks of this work and parse it out so that it is doable. Because otherwise, I think that we're all going to become so overwhelmed that we're just going to spin our wheels. So I know that we've been having lots of conversations as individual teachers and as teacher teams. We've been really, I think, trying in a very open, transparent way to make it work for everybody. But I'm putting that out there because that is a huge body of work, and certainly something that we've been spending a lot of time on here at school. The other part of this, the second bullet, is that because we're seeing such a wider range of students in the classrooms, we're not just in this transitional work from the Common Core standards, we're not just deriving lessons and unit plans from the newly adopted Common Core standards. We're also working with kids with some fairly intensive needs and making those standards work for those kids as well. That requires a lot of work. Some of our teachers sit on student teams that meet on a weekly basis. One of our teachers has 3 kids with very intensive needs in the classroom. So that's a first grade classroom. And Marcy, I don't know if you want to speak to that very quickly. Like how many hours a week do you spend just in terms of supporting 2 or 3 kids with fairly remarkable needs?
Well, some of those kids need, I have a team meeting on a weekly basis, others are bi-weekly. We have IEP meetings, but we might also have a meeting to plan for differentiation, and then doing the differentiation. So it's a large body of work, especially with 3. So it's a good chunk of time every week.
And I'm thinking of Marcy because she has, as I said, 3 kids in the intervention that really require tremendous amount of individual support and work.
Academically and behaviorally, yeah.
And I'm not sure where the solution is or where the answer lies in terms of managing that. Again, we're just throwing this up here to really reflect what we're trying to accomplish as far as APs and the next APs that in store. This is just a quick list of assessments that we're currently involved in. I've just been feeling for the last couple of years we really need to rethink our September literacy assessment approach because it requires so much time. And at Hiawatha, I'm not sure if it's any different at Summit or Fleming, but we bring in guest teachers to support our teachers while teachers assess. And just having a lot of guest teachers in the building during those first 3 or 4 weeks, it can be problematic. And at some point, I'm hopeful that we can have a conversation in terms of maybe approaching that assessment piece a little bit differently. In terms of our school climate, we have had, as of Friday, 34 school days. We've had 35 major referrals to our timely workroom or to my office. And most of them were for fighting or very aggressive behavior. 12 kids comprised all those referrals. As a Respectful Learning Place team, Raina, Mar, Scott Evans, Ian Albo, who's the school social worker, and myself, we're again trying to meet on a fairly regular basis to make sure that teachers are feeling supported and specialists are feeling supported in terms of managing those kids. Had a couple of formal bullying complaints so far, and this data does not include children who are being supported. We have 1 youngster who's being supported this year by the Howard Center Improvement Program. And we are, to be proactive, we are, as a Respectful Learning Place team, planning some school-wide activities to address the bullying thing and the teasing thing. This is general, how do you behave at school thing here at Hiawatha. And again, I know that Amy will speak a little bit more to this, but without being repetitive, our teachers and specialists have been putting hours and hours and hours of work into curriculum mapping. This is something that really started probably a couple of years ago, a year ago, maybe 18 months ago. The work goes on. It's intensive. And we've had a number of consultants come in and could possibly have some other consultants come in throughout the school year. I think really working with Amy and our teacher teams, we really want to make sure we can kind of parse out the professional learning work. And Scott Evans, our school counsel, just returned from mindfulness training, which he has actually, and with some colleagues, have actually implemented across the schoolhouse in lots of different ways. And there's our communication updates. Just started this just a few weeks ago using email. We grabbed all the email addresses from Power School. We're sending out sending out email updates to parents, and everyone seems to like it. I guess there's some feedback from a test group that I worked with, and everyone thought it was awesome. PTO stuff. And I said I wasn't going to reach bullet, didn't I? I said I was not going to read each bullet. I'm not going to read each bullet.
You skipped a couple.
Okay. Just know that and I've said this to you as a board before, usually when we meet in May or June, we go over our school action plan. What we do on a daily basis is complicated, complex work. I'm not sure how we're able to achieve all the things that we're able to achieve. We have 35 people here, all kinds of approaches and interest and different ways of addressing the body of work. And we sometimes are in conflict with each other, and sometimes there's confrontation. And it's very hard, it's difficult. But I have to say, to a person, we always, I think, when we get to that place, step back and try and make sense of it and try and make it work for the kids. You know, it's nice as an adult that we feel like we can put things in place that are convenient for us, but I think we all realize that we're here for the kids at Essex Junction, for the children that come in through those doors each day. A couple of things I do want to point out. I really feel like we tried so hard to make our schedule work over these last several years. And we've had some successes. There are some things that we've had in place in the past few years that have worked. I think there are some things maybe that some people like about what we're doing this year. But I really want to challenge myself as a school principal and my faculty to continue to try and come together to derive a schedule that really works in the final analysis really for kids. And I'm hopeful that that will happen. I'm confident that, you know, a bunch of us will get together and work on it. Maybe we can connect with Summit and Fleming like we have done in the past to problem solve and to deliberate and debate. But I really think that until we embrace our elementary school schedules in a way that really makes sense for kids and gives our professional and paraprofessional staff an opportunity to do all this work that we're asking them to do, I think it's always going to feel tenuous at best. And of course, the schedule really needs to include adequate meeting time. I think the third thing is self-inflicted. I think that I would say all of our staff here, our faculty here at Hiawatha, they are so ambitious, and you are such achievers, and you work so hard to get the job done in an exemplary way. I'm finding that I can't just say to them, oh, do a little bit and stop there. When they think about a transition to the Common Core standards, they want it done incredibly well, and they want it done now. And I think what I'm finding is that it's really important to balance those initiatives that we have put out on the table, not only here at the schoolhouse level, but at the CCSU level, in terms of just ensuring that we are approaching the parsing out of those initiatives in a way that's mindful of the fact that we generally have educators that are going to try, they're all going to shoot for that A+ in terms of their work. There's other things there that I've already talked about. I'm not going to repeat myself. And the last thing I'll say, because I notice I'm a couple minutes over my allotted time, and that is that I really feel as a school, and this kind of relates a little bit to what Frank was talking about earlier, as a school and as a district, as an SU, and as a community, we really need to look differently at mental health issues and address them differently. Understand that a lot of things that are supported, a lot of issues that do come into the schoolhouse are supported on the front line by classroom teachers and specialists, and by your school principal. So I know that this past spring, the community got together in the aftermath of this horrible thing in Connecticut and had, I thought, a really engaging, rigorous conversation about mental health. And I know that Mark McGuire, our special ed coordinator, is incredibly mindful of the issue. We've talked about it as your school leaders in terms of really stepping back from how we are piecemealing supports in place for kids that may be hit or miss, and really taking a very comprehensive, systematic approach to dealing with this issue. I'm going to stop there, I apologize I didn't leave enough time for just a very quick overview of this very special project that's actually addressing this. Would the board be okay to hear this?
Sure.
Okay, Alice?
Thank you. So there's a team of 4 of us, Joel Rasco, Raina, Scott, and myself, who are embarking on a before-school exercise project this year. Came to this through some professional development that we had around supporting kids with mental health and emotional regulation difficulties. So the research shows that it's really easy to forget that physically we were born to move, and in our modern society, a lot of the movement that has been natural for children growing up has really been engineered out of their lives. And we see impacts on things like childhood obesity and diabetes and difficulty with regulating emotion and mental health needs. So there's some research that talks about how exercise impacts the brain. At first, it wakes up the front part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, which is the most, it's like the CEO of your brain. It's the part of your brain that helps you to make decisions, link to old information, pay attention, tune out distractors. The research shows that physical activity, and the research shows at least 8 minutes of sustained aerobic activity will spark biological changes in the brain. They encourage the brain cells to bind together. It actually allows the brain to optimize its functioning. It creates brain cells and allows the brain to be better connected. The aerobic activity also creates neurotransmitters, which are the chemicals that allow your brain cells to communicate with each other. So the long and short of it is there's really some interesting studies which have emerged in the last few years that have shown that regular, sustained aerobic exercise can have a positive impact on children, on their emotional regulation, their academic functioning, and their mental health. So the 4 of us are going to test this theory to see whether regular, sustained, and vigorous aerobic exercise will have a positive impact on attention, behavior, emotional, and or academic functioning. We're receiving some consultative support from a psychology professor at UVM and some of our students, and this professor's partner, who's a kinesiologist from Michigan State. We're also receiving some volunteer support from some high school athletes through Ed Hockenberry's Athletic Leadership Council. We're actually receiving training this Thursday from the UVM professor, the kinesiologist, and some of the professor's students. She's very interested to see if we can create a program here. She's not going to be officially analyzing our data, but she's supporting us in our data collection system and letting us use her curriculum that she's designed. We'll be running the program Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays before school. We're going to do 2 9-week sessions, one from November 11th through January, and the second in March and April and May. Oh, as I said, the program will run before school. We know that it's going to be challenging to get students here that we identify as at risk, so we're in the process now of generating a large list of students. Some of them will end up being our control group, and some of them will be our group receiving the intervention. And our hope is that we can build a data collection. Well, we have a data collection system, but we're hoping to build a set of data which may convince the district to try something like this going forward.
So, question about that, will, you're going to select students and have a control group and at risk, but will it be anyone can join, or is it
not
only
for
the
this
selected?
first round, because we really are trying to identify kids who are demonstrating concerns behaviorally, academically, and or mental health. We do think that this is going to benefit all children, and it would benefit all children, but we're really testing that theory to see if we can have an impact on kids at risk. And I also feel that we'll be able to build a data set which would promote the positive effects that it would have on those kids. We know it would positively affect all kids, but we made that decision to start with this small group.
So we have peer leaders like Triple E has, or
Well, not all of our kids are going to have significant overt behavioral issues. Some of them may be, we have some kids on our list who tend to be more withdrawn or have more sadness. This is actually why we are inviting some high school kids, and we'll be having, we think, 3 high school athletes at each session, 3 on Mondays, 3 on Wednesdays, 3 on Fridays. And we feel having those high school students there will help to engage the younger kids as well. And we are starting in our first group with a small group so that we can be sure that we're managing effectively and that all kids are engaged.
Okay. Anybody? No, it sounds like a great program. Thank you for putting your time into that.
And so just to conclude, we want to thank you for all that you do. On behalf of our children and parents and families and our staff, we know that you work incredibly hard, that you put a lot of hours in going to meetings. You know, you may not have a whole lot of people in attendance, and you have rigorous conversation. We know that you have children's interests at heart all the time. We love having you in our schoolhouse. We love making connections like this with you. You are our Prudential committee. You are our school board. And we really value the connections very, very much. So thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share. Even though I did a lot of talking. Alice, explain a little bit about one particular program, piece of programming that we have in place to make it better for kids. So thank you for all that you do.
Well, and I just want to say that, I'll let you talk in a minute, but we appreciate being here, and we appreciate an audience for a change. We love coming here and appreciate that this is your after school time, and you have a lot to do. And to quote Tom, I don't know how you get everything done either, but I appreciate it, and we do recognize it, and are willing to help where we can. So open to listening. Did you say?
I had a question. The principals in Essex Junction, Mary, Dan, and yourself and Lori, used to hold meetings quite often, or how often do we do that now?
So Mary Tuesday, Ryan, Lori Singer, and I meet monthly. In addition to our educational leadership team meetings, we typically meet after school. We rotate sites. We actually included Marcy Lewis, who's the Westford principal as well. And we tackle those issues that are really germane to our EEE through grade 8 programming. And so we do agenda setting, we follow up with meeting minutes, and it's an incredibly committed and dedicated team. We may not always agree on different approaches, but we do work hard to come together and achieve consensus. And it's been very, very healthy and beneficial, I think, for the kids to have such cohesiveness.
I personally want to thank you, because budget season is coming up, and this interaction really makes a difference in decisions and what decisions we might have to make. So the human aspect, instead of just numbers on a page. Thank you.
And we snuck into the new room, and it looks great.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
It's good.
Good. Yep. So we're gonna move on to the rest of the principals' reports from Jen.
Start with Summer Street. They are having their largest student population in recent years as well, with 245 children in attendance. The CTE students refurbished 2 large picnic tables for the natural playground and for their Summit's annual end of summer picnic. Grant, I believe you were working the grill there. They have been doing some ongoing professional development with Sandy Stanhope as well. And they have set up a math lab for students in 2nd and 3rd grade to provide additional support. They have some upcoming events. Tuesday, October 22nd, their natural playground meeting at 6:30. That's in the library. Thursday, October 24th, they're going to have an assembly on walking to school safely with Essex Police Officer Diana Moranowitz. Friday, October 25th, the PTO spaghetti dinner at 5 to 7. And Friday, November 1st, there's a fun run in the afternoon. They will have a formal dedication of Summit's 2 Little Free Libraries for Tuesday, October 15th. And following that, there'll be a presentation by the members of the Natural Playground Committee. Thomas Fleming, they've seen a lot of transformations as well. They've got their new gym floor. and the students have created some art movement figures that are on the gym walls. They have in their learning center new book stacks, a new staff collaboration area, and a new tech cafe area. Their student
And just to let you know, at open house,
Yeah.
that cafe, it's going, I think it's phenomenal.
Oh,
They're
good.
almost there and finished with it, and I really like that concept of having little spots
to go and do cozy nooks. Yep. Let's see. Their staff as well is doing professional development with Sandy Stanhope. They have implemented a new keyboarding program, the Typing Club, which is web-based and available to students to practice on their home computers. The staff has formed a Principal Leadership Advisory Council. Representatives from the faculty will meet with the principal on a regular basis to problem solve and talk about climate improvement. Principal Ryan wanted to acknowledge and thank Amy Bigelow, their school counselor, for coaching the Fleming School spelling team and getting them ready to compete against other area schools in the VPA Regional Spelling Bee to be held in November. And finally, ADL. Their Alpha team is organizing their next school-wide event, which is the Winter Olympics, and this will take place January 20th, that week. The art teacher, Tina Logan, is going to Montreal with 8th grade students and their parents to the Museum of Fine Arts to see the work of American artist Dale Chihuly. He's world-renowned for his glass blowing and installation art, and the kids have replicated his style in their work, and it is hanging in several locations at ADL. They are building their teacher advisory committee, the template for their standards-based report cards, and the goal is to have that draft ready by March 1st. And 2 public events coming up. Parents as Partners Beautification Project, that's going to be at ADL Saturday, October 26th from 10 to noon, and they will have a band concert November 14th at 7 p.m.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen.
And I'm going to make Denise's night and move agenda item 4 and 5 towards right before our consent agenda so that our other visitors can get on with why they're here. So we're going to move straight to the Common Core SBAC updates. If you're ready. Yep. 4 and 5 were the board update and the reports. Yep, please do.
Yes.
I have handouts because I know that you didn't have a lot of time tonight. I was asked to come and just give an update in terms of the work that the schools have done around Common Core. I was sitting back here thinking about, I think we were at Essex High School. It was 2 years ago. I think it was a carousel meeting where I think I stood up and said, so Common Core is coming and SBAC, and it will be a body of work for your teachers. And that is what I think Tom was reflecting on. The body of work exists within the buildings as well as across the buildings. The standards themselves for literacy and math are not necessarily controversial in and of themselves, but any change in standards means change in curriculum planning. And so that is work that our teachers take quite seriously. I have a quick overview. I don't know if I have many extra copies for audience members, and I apologize. I really tried to make it a one-pager, which meant small font. What I just wanted to do was give a quick overview about the kinds of work that our teachers are engaged in, and it's going to use terms that you may not be familiar with, so please, I'll take your lead in terms of whether or not you want to ask any questions. I just wanted to, I see your last page. I'm just going to take one, if that's okay. The State Board of Education adopted Common Core 2010, so really we've had about 2 years of planning and we're in year 1 of implementation. I don't need to go through all the bullets, I promise. I won't go through all the bullets, but I did want to explain to you that our approach here really has been a multi-year approach. We wanted to build awareness for community members and for teachers and build knowledge for all. We started by building knowledge for vertical team members, teacher leaders, administrators. The awareness was at your level in terms of boards, met with all faculty members, and began communicating with the public about it. But that was really a 2-year plan to implement. So we've had numerous cross-school grade level meetings with teachers making sense of their new standards for literacy and math. We've had numerous opportunities to send teachers to conferences, state, national, as well as regional. We take up the most seats at all of our regional trainings for literacy and math. When you see the CCSU tables, we take them up. We've had, our schools have a long history of valuing embedded professional development and coaching. So you've heard the name Sandy Stanhope. She comes from Vermont Math Initiative. She's been in now all of our buildings, K through 8. Bob Laird also comes from Vermont Math Initiatives. He's a community member, and he is now, I think, organizing his second course over at ADL to support the math teachers over there. Our high school created a position called a literacy coach. Erica LeClaire and our K through 8s have drawn upon her. Most recently, she ran a few sessions with me over at Fleming and up at Westford, and tomorrow, today's Monday, this week, I've lost track, we're going to be administering the practice SBAC to the faculty. So the faculty will actually take the practice test, and she's been an incredible asset to our district. We have recently, just this year, joined the Columbia Readers and Writers Project. We have a community member who's moved up here from Teachers College at Columbia University recently, so we found out she moved here, and we've tapped into her, and she is Beth Moore, and she's been working with some of our teachers. So we've had a great deal of resources to be able to support our teachers. I think the challenge, and Tom talked about it, is the time. It's a lot of change for teachers. I applaud them for the incredible amount of work that they're doing. It's a lot of change, and they've worked pretty hard on this one, and they've been very committed to working across the buildings as well as within the buildings. So I don't know if you have any questions of some items here. I guess one highlight, so the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium SBAC will be our new assessment, spring 2015, if you remember that timeline that I showed you way back when. The state of Vermont did set up an opportunity for schools to be able to volunteer to participate in the pilot SBAC. All of our schools agreed to do that this year in place of NECAP. Our high school was the only one that was chosen to do that. So this year our high school will be piloting the SBAC exam this spring, while our K through 8s are in the middle of, if not done, administering the NECAP assessment this fall. So we'll learn a lot from watching the high school participate in this. It is a computer-based test. There are some paper things, but by and large it's computer-based, and that will be new to us, and it's nothing better in terms of testing our technology than having 350 kids sit in front of computers taking an assessment within a short window of time. So we're looking forward to learning quite a bit about it, and the administrative team, our educational leadership team had committed to deepening their own understanding of leading Common Core, learning from each other. So we've committed to 2 hours every other month to that topic, leading Common Core, and tomorrow morning at 7:35 a.m. we will start that work. And some of what we're going to be doing is looking at that practice test. So do you have any questions about my small fonted item here? I just wanted to reflect for you in as cheat sheet as possible, just the amount of work our teachers are engaged in right now.
Do we have enough equipment to do the testing next year?
Here's the good news. So unlike NECAP, which has a much smaller window, the SBAC exam, when it's fully implemented, will be a 90-day window. So we have 3 months at the end of the school year to be able to administer this to students, and that buys schools, including schools that are much less technology resourced than we are, a big window to be able to administer this. The window that we have this year will be similar in terms of the amount of time, but it will be bumped up. So the practice or the pilot test this year up at EHS will actually be February, March, and April. So it'll be a good test of that window. Mm-hmm. But as you can imagine, it's never hard to move 350 kids through anything. So what we're doing is, as we're giving the practice test, we're having some of our education technology integration specialists watching it. They've been involved, as am I, in conversations with other districts who have piloted it to try to capture information like which browsers work best, what happens when you click here, does it shut down, those kinds of things. I think it's the reason the state has chosen to pilot it, so we can test out some of that. Mm-hmm. So I think we're feeling pretty good about it right now, but we don't know what we don't know.
I have a question on technology. Are we up to date with what we need to be able to do these test pilots and every school?
The state has asked us to conduct several audits. So each and every audit that we've submitted has passed the requirements. So we've tested our equipment, our broadband. Vince Ganello has us in a really good place.
I guess just one aside that I didn't mention, our state board did adopt a new set of science standards this summer, the next gen science standards. I just came back from a full day training with some of our teachers. The reviews are that we like the science standards. There's a great deal of emphasis on inquiry and engineering design. It will be another change, K-12 for our teachers. There's not a date set for implementation from our Agency of Education, so we're taking our time to get smarter on it. But you can imagine it's causing teachers to sort of look at it and say, what is this going to mean for my grade level? And until we hear otherwise, we will still be implementing the NECAP science exam, which is based on our Vermont grade expectation. So we're in a bit of we have a leg in both sort of boats. Is that the metaphor I'm thinking of? But we don't have a direction yet in terms of when we'll be implementing the next gen science standards and when we'll be assessed on those.
So if a teacher hits a speed bump, they go to these embedded professional development, that's their go-to person?
A speed bump?
Well, like if they don't feel like they're completely prepared for, even though they've done everything to prepare, what?
I think anytime you, I mean, this is, I think, I've worked in 2 different states, so this is my 4th set of state standards. Anytime you put any teacher through any change in terms of a state standards or local curriculum, it takes time to immerse yourself in it. If you can imagine yourself as a teacher trying to implement it, we are going to wade through it as best we can. We know, and the message that I've shared with teachers is it's all going to be okay. You're going to move along faster in some areas than in others. We're still going to be teaching our students to read, write, and so forth. And what I think we have going for us here are pretty strong teams that work really well together and work well with their learning specialists. But there will be, as you say, some speed bumps along the way. One relatively significant one, and Tom mentioned it, is that we did evaluate our math program, our 2007 edition of Everyday Math, and found it to be wanting in terms of its mismatch with the math Common Core standards. We have a task team that's launched an evaluation of 5 programs, including the 2012 Everyday Math, as well as a number of others, and are looking a little bit deeper on, they met on September 25th. They'll be meeting October 21st again to do a deeper look at one particular program that they felt like was a closer match. It's been a difficult year for our teachers to have a math program that does not match Common Core standards. The challenge has been that the vendors have not come out with programs quite as quickly as we've needed. This really, Common Core, if you think about it, has been around for 2 years, and our vendors really haven't come out with full-on programs. So they're being very thoughtful. They know that any change for teachers, program or otherwise, is a big change and requires professional development. They know that it's a significant financial investment. So we will know within the next few weeks whether or not the team feels like they have enough information to go deeper and come back with a recommendation related to your budget. That's a big speed bump.
Big speed bump.
You know, I think that the biggest challenge right now is finding the time to do it. And as I indicated, you know, I would say the same thing for all of our faculties throughout Essex Junction. They're an incredibly dedicated, hard-working group of teachers, and they want to accomplish this body of work yesterday. And they can. It literally is a transition that's going to take a couple, 3, 4, 5 years to fully accomplish. And trying to find the time to get the work done is really challenging. Amy has lined up an amazing cadre of consultants there. They have this professional expertise and background and experience to really inform the conversation. But can you imagine having that conversation at the end of the day or in the middle of the day with a schoolhouse full of children where crises are always surfacing, and you're trying to have a continuous, purposeful, consistent, professional dialogue about how to execute a lesson in the classroom. I think if I were to pick one issue that is really quite frustrating right now, just the lack of time to accomplish this work. And by the way, to do the instructional planning in the interim and to manage all these other things that we're being asked to manage in the interim. So it's not just one thing we're doing, we're literally multitasking on several very high-level projects while just getting through the school day, while responding to lots of crises during the school year. And I think that's what's making this seem somewhat insurmountable right now. I know that one of my faculty members connected, and had a conversation, and I hear you, So, and I want to go back to the schedule, I know with the calendar, one of the premises driving calendar was to try and create professional time for people to get this body of work done. And so I'm hopeful that maybe next year or the following year at some point, we're able to create the logistics that allow our teachers to accomplish, to tackle and accomplish all of these things to make it better for kids.
And I would just add, it's especially problematic for teachers who are at the K-5 level because they teach every one of those subject areas. Mm-hmm. So that's where we're feeling the most anxiety around the Common Core standards implementation, especially with the next gen science standards out as well now. You almost say that under your breath because it's just another huge body of work.
And to exasperate things, we had this old model of bringing substitute teachers and we call them guest teachers here at Highland. It's not working. And it's not working because when we're trying to do this professional work, we're bringing in people who, they may be certified teachers, but they're not the teachers. They're not the classroom teachers. And so, given the literacy assessments this month, the professional learning opportunities that India set up, the stuff that CBC sets up, I think I got that. We have some teachers that have been down in the classroom probably every week over the last 7 or 8 weeks. That's not good for kids. So I think the challenge, again, on the overarching level is how do we accomplish all these things in a way that doesn't mitigate what goes on in the classroom. I think it's a huge, huge question that hopefully we'll address over the next couple of years.
Tom, do you guys feel like you are getting the support you need, the professional development, all of it that goes along with this? It's really just the time issue?
It is. Amy and I actually had a little mini argument, if you want to call it that, a little debate. Maybe not an argument. Amy's done a great job of lining up resources. She's wonderfully connected throughout the state and the region. It's finding time to do it. I was pushing back. I was saying, I can't avail my teachers to get another consultant because they're just flipping out in terms of trying to do all this done. And now, as I'm getting to know them better, even after all these years, they're so self-driven. They want to know it all. They want to do it all. Mm-hmm. They want to be that A+ teacher for the kids, and they want to do it tomorrow. And it's just not possible. I'm actually really challenging my faculty to step back, take a big step back, take a deep breath, and let's parse this out in a way that's digestible. Now, I know the vertical teams are an important part of what we do on this SU level, but we have trouble filling slots on the SU teams because we are doing this across all content areas, unlike the old level and high school level. And at any given day, we may have a couple, 3 teachers out of the building doing some sort of professional development, and that's not sustainable when we have 12 classroom teachers.
That's tough.
One question, Randy. I think you said you and Tom were evaluating how everyday math is lined up with Common Core. Is that something just you're doing with Hiawatha, or are you?
Oh, no. There's a math task team with representatives from every building and every grade level.
Okay.
I've got a question. The science tests that we've been taking, assessments, I shouldn't say tests, assessments, the last few years, it seems like it's even statewide that the proficiency, that we don't need it and the state doesn't need it. So what's going to happen with this? Is this going to be another, as we align the science, is it going to be another area that we just aren't going to be able to meet? That the state is requiring from us or the federal government?
So you moved us nicely
Speaking
to the next agenda topic. Amy will take us through the science recap. Perfect.
So
sorry.
On this.
Yes.
I know the teachers are going to be taking the test and the children and the high schoolers, is there a way we could, if we wanted to see it?
Would you like to take the test? It's
I
a
think I'd
public
like to
portal.
see it so we can understand better.
It
what
is.
they're
It's set
going
up
through.
right now as a practice test, and so I can certainly share with you the link. You go in and it looks as if you're going to log in, but you just check guess, and you can choose a grade and you can take the test. It will not give you the results at the end of the test, but to go through the exercise of taking it has been a lesson. We had some teachers at Fleming sort of taking deep breaths and saying, this takes real perseverance sort of to move through this. So it's giving us some pause around how many breaks do we want to have for kids during the testing period, what would make sense to take. So I can certainly share that with you. It's up for grades 3 through 11. Now there's some sophisticated parts of SBAC that are not built in yet, like accommodations, text-to-speech, that kind of thing.
So the question I'm hearing is, if parents were interested, what would be a venue?
You can Google the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium. They have release tasks that you can look at, and then they have the actual practice tests that you can get in, and you can start typing in essays. I could certainly post that somewhere, but probably the fastest thing to do would be to Google the Smarter Balance Assessment Consortium and look for the practice test.
Thank you.
So there may be some extras, but I was told that you received these possibly in your org notes, but I brought extras just in case you didn't have them, and they're colorful.
Oh, I only took one.
Now I have a mess here, but our science exam.
Yes, we did get them in our order.
Okay, so I have a few that I'll put out here for audience members.
There's like
I know that you, are there any other 8th grade ones left over?
yes.
Thanks. Thank you. So both at Essex Junction and Westford, we saw a drop in 4th grade results this year. There are 4 strands in the science kneecap exam: life science, physical science, earth-space science, and inquiry. The drops really resulted from 2 different things that we saw. One was our students are continuing to struggle with the inquiry tasks. We went back and looked at some of those items to see if there was anything in particular this year that was challenging, and we're trying to work with teachers to understand that a little bit better. When you take the test, you have to send it back, so you don't have it in front of you to look at. But sometimes they, or not sometimes, they do give out some release items for us to be able to look at to try to understand why our students didn't fare very well this year on the inquiry portion of the test. We also found that a large number of the students that were partially proficient were within 5 points of proficiency. So we're trying to go back to find out what items were keeping them that close from reaching proficiency. Our 8th grade scores fared pretty well, and our 11th grade scores fared pretty well this year. So I don't know, I know that this isn't a full-on presentation for you, but I wanted to bring it to you and see if you had any specific questions.
I'm just curious how it's going to work with Smarter Balance.
Well, Smarter Balance has been put in charge of creating the assessment for Common Core. I should say there's 2 consortiums, Park and Smarter Balance. The state of Vermont has chosen Smarter Balance. We don't know who will be in charge of our assessment for the next gen science standards. That's that foot in both boats right now, that we're looking towards those standards, but we don't have all the answers in terms of how it will be assessed or even who's going to be assessing it.
Thank you. So up next, we have the proposed new education quality standards. Who is speaking?
And so if I am speaking to this, I wanted to have an opportunity to share these before Grant started talking about budgetary needs. On top of the new Common Core state standards, the State Board of Education in Vermont has recently released the Education Quality Standards recommendations. So we have a whole new set of education quality standards from the state. And I'm just going to quickly take you through some pieces that I think will be important for you to know. The purpose of these rules is to ensure that all students in Vermont public schools are afforded educational opportunities that are substantially equal in quality and enable them to move to achieve or exceed the standards approved by the State Board of Education. So as you go through the front part of these education quality standards recommendations, you'll see that there's a process for adoption. There's definitions on page 4 that starts to help you understand all of the new terms that we're beginning to use, and in educationese is sometimes what we get accused of. What I think is really important are definitions on page 4, such as applied learning and what that means, college and career readiness. On page 5, personalized learning plans. I think that's another huge body of work. That is another piece that Tom is talking about as far as high level thinking and time needed to develop those personal learning plans. Proficiency-based learning, number 9 on page 5. What that means, and I wanted to make sure you had a hard copy to familiarize yourself with these terms, because these will be topics of conversations in the months ahead. The comment period for these standards close on October 28th, so there's not a lot of time for comment yet, although several superintendents are putting together with information from their faculties and staffs and leadership teams, some comments on these proposed standards. Under curriculum and instruction, on page 6, they talk about instructional practices, and here's where you start to hear conversations about flexible pathways and what we mean when we talk about flexible and multiple pathways. They're talking about virtual learning, internships, service learning, dual enrollment, and early college. So those are systems that we're trying to put in place so students have those options available to them. And when we're talking about proficiency-based learning, we're asking students to present multiple types of evidence of what they know that's not limited to teacher or student designed assessments, but to portfolios and performances and exhibitions and projects. More on page 6 about personal learning plans, and this is something on the top of page 7 I wanted to bring to your attention, because the terminology within these standards talks about this plan must be reviewed annually. So these plans need to be created with the student, a representative of the school, as well as a parent or guardian. So we have to find time now to create personal learning plans for every student in our systems, beginning grade 7. And there's a rolling calendar as far as rolling in 7 through 12. So all students will have personal learning plans from grade 7 to 12, and the program that we're using at the high school level to begin this body of work is called Naviance, and our leadership team explored this program this summer, and there was a nice connection between our middle school principals and looking at what the high school is using, so these personal learning plans can follow the student. But this is a really big body of work where under the curriculum content on page 7, you see that we're required to have students demonstrate proficiency in those 7 content areas. So what that's going to look like, so not only to know the standards, but then talk about how will students demonstrate proficiency in each of those areas. Some Potential cost, I think that is the first time on page 7 where a K-8 school board will start to see where we need to think about resources as far as personnel time to create personal learning plans and time for the curriculum work under the curriculum content area. The K-8 system is in compliance with the statement that we will provide students in grades K through 8 with at least 2 physical education classes per week. And it hasn't changed at the high school level at all for students grades 9 through 12, that they have 1.5 years of the equivalent of PE. There is a new assertion. It's not new, actually. I read the language in our law book, and it's defined in here as well that we shall offer options for students in grades K through 12 to participate in at least 30 minutes of physical activity each day. So it complements the good practice that we heard Tom's team talk about as far as the importance of physical activity. I think it speaks to the challenge that Alice spoke about as far as finding the time. So with a school day, 3 days a week, starting at 7, that's for students grades 5 to 8, that's how we're trying to find ways to accomplish that. At our K-8 level, we have recess, so that helps. And we can be in compliance through recess. At the middle school level, we have additional PE built in, so our middle schoolers have PE every day. So at the K-8 system, we're good. At the high school system, we're a bit challenged as far as ensuring that every student participates in either an after-school activity, a sport, or something like that, so that they have those opportunities. We're also being asked for each school, which is another financial commitment, to provide supplemental learning opportunities to students in all grades who exceed the standards. The only other places where I can see a cost, a potential cost on a place we might not be in compliance, which really is, I'll say, when you look at these education quality standards, more of a financial concern at the high school level to be in compliance. And there's a wide degree of interpretation on page 9 under school leadership, which follows nicely Tom's presentation today. It talks about ensuring that all school leaders must have sufficient time to carry out their responsibilities in order to focus on improving student learning. So there's a wide degree of interpretation there and what that'll look like. I'm uncertain, but they do suggest that schools create school leadership teams, and you heard Jen today report out that Fleming School has created such a team to accomplish this body of work, and professional learning groups for all teachers. Number 3 on page 9. You've heard Tom talk about it today, but to create school time, at least 2 hours per month, and are facilitated by trained teachers. So finding that time, they're really expecting that in the education quality standards. They've asked us to look at minimizing supervision of non-teaching staff by the principal, and in order to find time, on page 10, number 6, we have created an electronic S&E model. It helps with the evaluation piece, but supervision is supervision, and it takes time. I think one place where you can feel great about where we are right now is page 10 still. The board of each supervisory union, number D, or letter D, employs a person or persons qualified to provide financial and student data management services for the supervisory union, and we're pleased to have Grant Geisler doing the financial end, and newly hired Kim Gaylor doing the student data management services. So that new addition has put you in compliance in that area. On page 11, you'll continue to see the second paragraph on that page, the requirement for each supervisory union or school district to employ licensed special ed staff and shall ensure each school employs sufficient and qualified staff as needed to identify students eligible for special ed services and to implement each eligible student's IEP and Section 504 plan. So that comes directly from Act 153, 156 that we've been working on for a while now. And you'll see class size standards, which you've also adopted a policy for those class size standards on page 11. They take students or classes in K through 3 and average fewer than 20 students per teacher. And then they combine grades 4 through 12. When taken together, classes shall average fewer than 25 students per teacher. So that's an area that we're going to have to dig into and see at the high school level if that might mean some increase in staffing if these standards are adopted. The needs-based professional learning, you've heard a lot about that today. This continues to talk about what those needs are and how to provide that training. On page 12, at the top, you see staff evaluation programs. And this is the enforcement language that comes from the Vermont Guidelines for Teacher Effectiveness. Actually, Tom and Deb Robbins are trying to structure a team for supervision and evaluation to look at our current model, to update it according to the new guidelines. We're having a hard time to staff a team right now to do that body of work. We have a current team looking at the leadership, supervision and evaluation model, and we're making that one of the hallmark focus areas of our leadership teamwork this year as well. So there may be some potential costs there to provide supports to improve instructional practice, content knowledge, and working relationships. Under the comprehensive system of support services, this language you're pretty familiar with. I think the changes you'll see here again, you have one school counselor to 300 students, which is what's required at the elementary level. I think that they were thinking with the personal learning plan requirement and the need for more counselors at the secondary level, they've changed that ratio that there'll be no more than 200 students per school counselor at that level, the secondary level. So again, you can feel good that that's not a resource. But the piece that's important to know is if the high school is going to demand those resources, it's still the same community that supports those budgets. So where there'll be increases in one place, the community will need to be, to understand if these standards as proposed are approved, then there'll be some impact in our budgets. Page 14, I'm almost done. Access to instructional materials. There's many interpretations here, but we shall provide a learning environment with sufficient supplies and infrastructure to allow for learning. I think, again, there's many interpretations of some of these standards. On page 15, each school district shall develop a local comprehensive assessment system. You heard Tom talk today about local assessment in the beginning of the school year. All of our local assessment work right now is under development. So assessment is another whole area that's under development, not only at the state level, but what we do during the course of the school day through our formative assessments to know if students are learning and making progress. And then reporting results. You're familiar with school report. What's new here on page 15 under number 5 are the bullets under number 5. If the school is a secondary school, data describing includes all of those over onto page 16 is all new language high schools must provide as evidence. There's a requirement to report to parents. So there may be some a need for professional development money there. And the big one on page 16 is another team that we have working right now where we've been exploring student data systems. We have a student data manager, and now we're exploring student data systems. After the leadership team meeting at 7:30 to 10:30, the data team will meet to review the systems that have been brought to our attention and we visited and think are worthy of consideration to bring forward for budgetary consideration. And that might be able to be used, some creative ways of financing that system. But that's another body of work that's happening as well. And I know I'm beating a dead horse here, but I continue to talk about time as an issue. And I think we perhaps didn't do a good enough job of painting the context of why the regional superintendents were moving forward with a new calendar proposal. But tonight, as we continue to talk about the need, having an audience to hear the need and to understand the avalanche of change that's upon us right now is really important, and how we find a way, if not through that proposal, in what way can we find to meet some of these requirements that are upon us. And then finally on page 17, the reporting for the plan shall include indicators provided by Vermont agency, and this is under the comprehensive action plan, and you're used to seeing your school action plan. Well, now the agency of education may be playing a greater role in that, as outlined on page 17, and we'll see how that will further inform the schools in having to report directly now to the agency, at which time the secretary will visit 8 to 10 schools during the school year to see if we're in compliance with these standards. So there's a regulatory component to it as well. And that goes on until they start speaking a little bit about variance and waivers and what that waiver process will look like as far as class and caseload size requirements, and the secretary's capacity to respond within 10 days of any kind of waiver request. Important that this is probably the most troubling piece, and it's the last statement on page 19, and it's the effective date. That these rules, except as otherwise specified herein, shall become effective on 15 days after adoption and is complete in accordance with 16 VSA 845D, which that'll be the concern that I think the feedback will express the ability to be in compliance, and in 15 days the board will be meeting in January. That there's budget considerations and time considerations, that they may need to extend different timelines or roll different pieces of these standards. I will say that they're good standards. The direction is good. The time for implementation right now with the Common Core standards, Next Gen standards, and these new Ed Quality standards and all of our new assessments is tough. It's tough. But they set a direction that I think as educators, we want to rise to the occasion of moving into a proficiency-based arena with our students. We want to create personalized learning plans for our students. We're not opposed to, in principle, to what these standards are requiring. What we're concerned about is implementation timeline. So I know that's a lot
15 days?
Yeah. After
And so
adoption.
you think it's going to be adopted in January? Is that?
So they're taking comments now. October 28th is the last day to send in comments. But the state board will be meeting and making decisions around these. And I know that several educators will be at the table to propose some of the delays in timeline that we're talking about. So it's a body of work, though, that we need to stay on top of. I think with all the changes that were happening, the education quality standards were almost an oversight by the time we started to dig out what was being required of us and the changes that are coming. The conversation in our communities, conversation with our boards, we're all late coming to the table with these proposed standards that were released, that the state board took action on, I think, at their June meeting. So July, August, and here we
The
are.
Vermont conference this year, that is what, October 23rd?
24, 25, I think.
25. Is there a time period there? I haven't looked at the schedule where this can be discussed with?
Yes. So we'll have an opportunity for discussion. I'm so pleased that you have 2 PC board members attending the conference this year. And that's why I spent more time than I had allotted to make sure that you were well informed and had a hard copy, to really take the time to read them and to think about the cost implications and the time, the resource of time.
It sounds like almost all of us should be there with the changes coming upon us, but with work, I mean, I was lucky to get off of work to go this year.
Yeah,
It doesn't always happen.
Well, some representation is better than none, and
Right.
we have...
And we can certainly write letters.
And we absolutely write statements
definitely
and send them forward through your representatives.
I have a question for you, Judy, which, how much contact do you have with the legislators, your legislators besides Martha Heath? Our legislators are Linda Waite-Simpson and
Tim.
Because I wonder if they realize the impact this is going to have?
I think that these next few months, I'm hoping there'll be opportunities for engagement, and it's really not a legislative piece, but rather a State Board of Education decision. I think that right now, raising awareness as far as what some of the cost implications and the the resource of time implications is our first step. So there's a website that was included in your org notes that you could go there and you can read them, write letters. I'll be happy if the PC wants to make a statement about any particular piece in the standards to take your feedback if there's something you wanted to generate in writing. I do want us to think about, though, it is a progressive set of standards and something that we should consider worthy of the direction. It's just the time period and the costs that we should pause a moment and reflect on.
Well, it's interesting, even down to the smallest thing, because Dave and I, on policy right now, we're going to be talking about the wellness policy. And you look at this and it says K through 12 to participate in 30 minutes of physical activity beyond gym.
Right.
Well, they have gym just 2 days, and we live in Vermont. So what happens when it goes below that temperature and they need to stay in? They're not getting their 30 minutes of activity. So you've already gone to non-compliance on that small little piece.
Right, so it's pretty prescriptive, and that would be my recommendation, Jen, to say we value physical activity and will ensure as much time as possible could be donated to that, but take out things
gonna
like
be extended,
30-minute
right, yeah.
requirements, because that's difficult. You know, you could use weather as an excuse.
Right,
in the
extenuating
winter here.
circumstances
Many
with weather.
circumstances would prevent that from happening on a daily basis. So let's not be that prescriptive on time, but consider the concept and find ways to embed more physical activity, but not to 30 minutes daily. It's too prescriptive.
Like today, we had a field trip. Kids were out for 6 hours. I mean, so if we don't get 30 minutes the next day, I don't think they're shortchanged at all.
Right.
So I think you got to
Even
find
if
some
it says
balance.
on average
Right.
during the course of a week, you know, it's just the language. I think if we could move more to that type of language than to a daily prescriptive time amount, we'd be in a better place.
Who has authority at state level to increase the number of days that students would attend school?
State Board of Education.
Listening to Tom, listening to the time factor, when they keep when more and more requirements are put upon you, we're still dealing with an old-fashioned system. There's no modernization, no thought process. And I know that's why this region was looking at changing the school calendar. And the superintendents do have the authority to be able to change that, each district, right?
We do, but
Each
we
region.
need to stay within the 175 minimum student days and the 5 minimum PD days. And there's different contracts for all the different districts and supervisory unions in the region. So we have variance in the number of school days that we add into our calendar, both for students and for professional development. So it's hard to create systems in a non-standardized environment. And that's why Calendar 2.0 was hopefully trying to at least provide commonality of time, blocks of time, where people could inform it locally. But I'll get more into that when we move into that.
You know what I'm almost finding, though, from having been on the board so many years ago, that every year, to me, there's less and less local control. I think there's very few things that we can impact. I think by the time we follow the federal and state regulations, I'm not aware if everybody at home is aware of the requirements we have upon us. And I just see it progressing, and I don't understand why, if the state does this as they go down the road, why aren't we doing it statewide contracts? Why aren't we doing things statewide? Because if the legislature determines these things, it would be a lot easier. Because the control is taken away from us at this point.
Part of the funding that we receive has required us to follow the No Child Left Behind reauthorization. So because we've committed to that as a state, we're required to do some of the things that I talked about within these education quality standards. So it's a revenue at the federal level that we received and then agreed to these assurances, and that's where we find ourselves today. So you're right, we're still living under a flawed accountability system, which actually I was happy to hear at one of the forums a parent talk about. We don't have failing kids nor failing schools. We have a flawed accountability system. And that's in flux right now as we move to SBAC and developing our own local accountability system based on proficiency and what that's going to look like. But to design and develop all of that right now simultaneously with the implementation of new Common Core standards and next-gen standards, and teacher and leader evaluation systems, is just this overwhelming avalanche of change that's hit in 2013. And that's where we are. So please take time with this. If you have questions, if you want to send me information, if you want to talk about it, I'm more than happy to take your feedback.
I made a note to try to remind us all, if we had feedback, to send it by October 20th, so it's another email.
I have a question.
Light reading.
Comment really. You know, we talk a lot about standards and testing. I mean, standards obviously are needed, and you have to have some way of understanding whether you're achieving what you're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
But we kind of touched on this at one of the carousel meetings earlier in the year, where it seems like we're trying to teach everybody the same thing the same way. And not everybody learns the same way, not everybody has the same ability, not everybody has the possibility of achieving the same things in all the same curriculums. So I'd like to see standards that, you know, and this goes to our legislator really, or even higher up, maybe, you know, the federal government, but you know, they send you a square hole and tell you to pound everybody into that hole. And often it's impossible. It's an impossible task for many, many reasons. You know, the person doesn't have the ability, they don't have the support, they don't have the desire. And we're trying to make them fit into this, you know, square hole. And it's like, someone's got to say, you know, people learn differently, people have different aspirations. And I think sometimes we're banging our head against a wall trying to teach certain people, and I'm not talking about everybody, you know, whether it be a person who's considered brilliant but doesn't excel in PE or doesn't excel in art, you know. Why are we forcing them to learn to a certain standard when they have no desire, no support, you know?
I so appreciate your question, David, because I think that's what I was trying to say about those education quality standards. They're moving us in a direction of personalization. So if we can create personal learning plans where we figure out with the parent and the student and the staff member, what is that passion? Where is it that you want? What do you want to be when you grow up? How do we start to build a program around your strengths? And that's what we need to do.
And right, but do we fail in the standards then, though, since we're not training that person to, you know.
And that's where proficiency-based learning comes in, because in that equation, then you're setting what is it that you will have to demonstrate that you know and can do to move to the next level of that standard. But just think about the change from what we're doing now to that new arena. It's the right place to go. It's just how we're going to get there. It's like going from here to California, and those 3,000 miles aren't going to happen overnight.
But then the testing, like, you know, is the testing still testing to everybody has to fit this mold?
No, it's going to be a computer adaptive test.
Okay.
So it has a little bit of a difference in the way it assesses those standards, but there will be some measure of proficiency. There will be a bar, and you know, I said it during convocation this year, we've never been asked to bring all students to this highest level of standards ever in history. So it's a big challenge, and it's the right challenge. It's just a question of building the systems of support to get there, having those important relationships with personalized approach. It's customization, just like what's happening in every other place in our society right now. And it's important that we move in that direction. It's just how do we resource it, both in financial support and in the time we need to actualize it. But I'm just thankful that I have a board here that's listening to the educational quality standards, that you heard teachers, you heard your principal, you heard your director of curriculum. We're all on message with the same concern, and that is knowing that we're moving in a good direction. It's just taking a breath, as Tom said, stepping back and say, we're going to get there. The destination is for all students to acquire proficiency, because we know the result in our society when they don't. But it isn't because of a test score. It's because we need to connect with that level of passion that's found within each student. And that's going to be the magic that happens when we figure that out. And then a student feels validated because he or she can express their strengths and connect with that level, and then plot that way forward, and then be able to measure that growth. So that's where we're going. It's just
It seems like
very
some of our
different.
tests, they're saying, okay, you're proficient. Well, you're proficient for say an 8th grade level. Well, maybe this person's, aspirations and abilities say, well, I don't want that, and I don't have the ability to get to that be proficient 8th grade level. I can get that level of math by 10th grade. But yet, at 8th grade, we're telling them you're not proficient. And that's got to be demoralizing to the student. It's like, no, you're on a path that's going to get you to 8th grade math by 10th grade, which is what you want or need, or whatever it is, to 12th grade math by 10th grade math by 12th grade, whatever it is. But tagging that person with a you're not proficient. Well, that's kind of like failing the person, right?
Self-fulfilling prophecy. Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where the personalized plans kind of come up.
Yes.
And the testing's got to match it, saying,
yes,
you're making progress,
yes,
you're where you need to be, and not where what the school wants or what the state wants. It's where do you want to be, and are you getting there?
That's right. And we have to look at those local measures regarding student growth and proficiency, and have a way to look at those in balancing state assessment. Because right now we're tipped too much on the state assessment side. We have to further develop our local assessments through the lens of proficiency-based learning. And that's going to be very different. Our schools are going to look very different in the years ahead. And it's just kind of an exciting time for us to all be thinking about how can we help that transition take place. So it starts with a level of awareness, advocating for the time and resources that we're going to need.
So let's move on to the budget discussion. Grant, I'm so happy to see your face at our table this year.
Seems like it was just yesterday. So yes, I'm here to talk about budget discussion. The org notes mentioned that site-based budget work is going to begin November 18th, which means that I'm sure anxious to get my worksheet, and then he's going to start work at his school level. Everybody's going to start their own school level work. Then it'll come to me. I'll start combining everything, and then we'll start having our deliberations. Deb and I will be talking to the principals about staffing issues, we build it like we build it every year. So we will get there. There was a 3-page budget discussion document in your org notes. I'm just going to talk about like the cross-cutting issues, the tax issues, and the budget guidance. I'm not going to get into all the details of this. Cross-cutting and legislative issues. We've already mentioned briefly Act 153, which is includes the centralized special ed requirement. That implementation date is July 1 of 2014. And that's for all special ed costs to be captured in the SU. The one limitation, though, is the law requires that collective bargaining agreements have to address the special ed employees before you can move them into the SU. So, in the FY15 budget, we're not moving people yet because we have to do the collective bargaining process first anyway. So, we're not moving people. If you remember, in FY14, this current year, we realigned a lot of special ed contracted services to the SU. In FY15, in the budget we're building, we're going to move the remaining special ed contracted services, including things like outside placement, tuition costs, and any other kind of contracted service, inclusion costs, things like that we have in the districts. We'll move those in to the SU. So those costs those specific line item costs will be out of the local budgets and into the SU budget, but you'll see the same expense. It's just going to be replaced with one line that says special ed SU assessment. And of course, during the budget process, we'll talk, I mean, I'm not going to just throw in one number and say that's it. We'll talk about how that number collapses into the district and how it was expanded and shown in the SU budget. It's the same process, it's just the detail of the line items will be in the SU. It will be billed, instead of the regular SU assessment is billed twice a year and just based on how much we budget. Special ed assessment is going to be probably charged out quarterly and it'll be based on actuals. So regardless of what the budget shows, it's going to be like it always has been. You'll pay for the special ed costs that you incur as a district. So that means the only piece that's left is the personnel piece. And we'll have to see whether we're going to need moving people or not. You know that we've gone through the thought process of submitting a waiver for personnel so that we don't need to move people because we already have the ability to reassign people. So we may still continue pushing at that strand a little bit to see, but for FY15 we won't be moving personnel. Healthcare reform is obviously another huge issue, and there's a lot of unknowns there. The good news is that it's not going to be an issue for us to sort out in the FY15 budget. The healthcare exchange opens July of 2014. I'm sure you heard. You can hear it on the radio all the time. But that's only for small employers, which means 50 or less full-time equivalents. So you're a large employer. As a matter of fact, you're an extra large employer. So from 50 to 100 employees, those folks can join the exchange in 2016, January 2016. For employers that have more than 100 people like you, the answer is, well, that's going to be the single payer system. But don't try to get any answers to what that might look like or be because there's way too many unknowns related to that. But the good news, like I said, is we don't have to sort healthcare reform out for the FY15 budget. Just know it's an issue out there. The healthcare exchange is open, but our VSBIT V-High health plans are grandfathered, so there's no rush for our employees to have to go to join an exchange. We're all fine. We do need to keep monitoring it, though, as we go along. And certainly the potential of VSBIT V-High going away at some point is a real possibility. And so, you know, as that pool gets smaller, I'm sure those rates are going to be more challenged. But that's something for next year for us to talk about. Judy mentioned the ed quality standards driven by the state board. I can tell you that we talked about it at our last VASBO meeting just last week with business officials, and I brought it up, and most people were unaware of it completely. So the fact that if it gets passed and is implemented in 15 days, I can tell you that most districts aren't going to be resourced for it because most of my peers didn't even know it was out there. So I would encourage you to go on the AOE website, see on there where you can just submit it. You can send an email just from yourself saying what you feel. So I'm typing up something for VASBO to send in, once again saying supportive of the ideas, supportive of the good things for kids, but you can't say that there's no cost, and it's going to take a lot to figure out what these costs are, especially when you talk time.
Yeah.
Because everybody's contracts are different, and time for one district is much different than time for another. So that is out there. Luckily, as Judy said, the ed quality standards are mostly going to be an issue for high school, for the high school. The last legislative issue is excess spending threshold. It's kind of a blast from the past. We used to talk about excess spending threshold a lot, and then we got sidetracked onto something called two-vote provision. The two-vote provision has expired, so you don't have to worry about that anymore. We don't have to worry about the two-part articles next year. It's gone. What the legislature has done is they reduced the excess spending threshold. So if you spent more than 125% of the ed spending per pupil from the prior year, then you got hit with this excess spending threshold, which basically meant for every dollar over that threshold, the community had to pay $2 in taxes. That's how it worked. The threshold has been 125% for a while, and what they've done is they've dropped it to 123% for FY 15 and 16, and then down to 121% for 17 and beyond. If you read my note on in the orgs, you'll see that I don't think that's going to be an issue for this district for the foreseeable future. So we can celebrate the 2-vote provision going away, and we don't have to worry about the changes to the excess spending threshold just for quite some time, I wouldn't think. Then moving into tax factors. The base rates, the tax commissioner makes a recommendation in December. I have a note in here that base rates could go up by as much as 5 cents. You'll remember they went up 5 cents last year. I've actually heard some people say it's not as much as 5 cents because it could even be more than 5 cents, but we'll have to wait and see. It's another month and a half or so, and we should get the letter from the tax commissioner. The base education amount was held level for a while. It went up to allow for inflation last year. If the base education amount goes up as the base tax rate goes up, then the impact to tax rates isn't quite as bad. If your base rate goes up and the base education amount doesn't allow for any inflation, then the tax rates really soar. So I think that in addition to the base tax rates going up, I think the education amount, the inflation amount, is going to go up, so it won't be quite as bad. Equalized pupils. You know, you've seen for the past few years, enrollment in Essex Junction is much different than enrollment across the state. You're very stable. As a matter of fact, your enrollment has been going up a little bit recently. So I would say your equalized pupil count should be stable, may even bump up a little bit. So that's good for tax rates. And we're going to get more enrollment projections soon. I sent the October 1 information to Bill Smith, who's our community volunteer who does our enrollment projections. He should be getting our projections back in November. Enrollment projections don't impact the equalized pupil count. That's a look back. But enrollment projections are important when you're looking at staffing, trying to make budgetary decisions. And in your org notes, there was also a little kind of scorecard on how Bill Smith did on the October 1 count this year. It looked at October 1 from last year, his projection for what this year would be, and then what this year's was. He projected that we were going to see an increase of 20 kids from K through 8. We actually saw an increase of, I think, 29 is what it ended up being. So pretty close once again. The second and third page, a lot of this is specific budget line items and just tells you kind of the way I'm going to approach things like tuition reimbursement, overtime salaries, things like that. So you can look at that at your leisure. We will definitely be going through this level of detail whenever we start with budget development, but you can take a look at this and then send any questions up through if you have them in any of the specific areas. Just a quick reference to salaries, though. As you know, teacher and support staff agreements are expired at the end of this year, so we have to make assumptions for what we're going to budget for next year. So that will be something we can talk about during executive session for salary assumptions. The bottom part of the last page just talks about proposed budget guidance, which you're very familiar with the budget guidance we typically get. For the school district, for the general fund, number one is always maintaining the high level of educational quality. Also supporting anything that's in school action plans that we need to do, and then being sensitive to the burden on taxpayers. Those are the three kind of guiding principles that you usually ask me to work with. On the capital fund, continue to prioritize, and we've kind of gotten that capital fund down to about as low as we'd want to go, around the $200,000 and $225,000 range. So I'm going to try to prioritize projects to fit into that level of funding. And we're going to talk once again about the fact that there's no new money coming into the capital plan, so we got to try to extend the life of that. For the past year or so, we haven't added any new money as far as articles for new tax revenue to be generated, especially last year because of the the two-part article that we had to deal with. So we may be asking again this year for folks to contribute like $100,000 toward a $225,000 capital budget, just to extend the life of our plan, so that we don't go from $225,000 to no money at some point. And the recreation side, the general fund, we'll be asked to build a budget that's constrained by a level tax rate, which we've done for the past decade or so. On the capital fund side, what we're asking is the ability to maybe revert back to the limit that we used to place on the capital plan, which was an additional 1 penny to the tax rate. We had been at that for a while, and then we went to a flat level amount of $75,000 because we had a challenge one year with budget defeats, and we made some changes, and that's one of the changes. But as a result, we haven't seen any kind of an inflationary amount for the recreation capital fund for 4 years, I think it's been.
Did we go to 100,000 and then back it off to 75,000?
Yeah, because an additional penny would have been around 100,000, and we had a defeat, and we dropped it down to 75, which was about where we had been.
100,000 then, okay.
So we left it. Yeah, we tried it, and then we dropped it back down. So what I'd like to do is try to go back to the additional penny to the tax rate again. One of the things that I think that might allow us to do is start really thinking about the pool and the fact that the pool's been around for a while. That long-term debt's going to be paid off pretty soon. I think what would be good is that extra $25,000 that we get, maybe we capture that just for like a pool fund. And if there's long-term pool things that we can do to make sure that we extend the life of that pool, if we can do something with $25,000, then great. If we need $100,000 for something, then we hold it for 4 years and then do something. So I'm just starting with that thought process. Brad's been talking to me about it. So if you give me the latitude to build a capital fund that's limited to 1 penny instead of just $75,000, that's where I'd like to start.
What would 1 penny bring in about?
It would be
About 100,000?
just over 100,000, I would think. It's a penny to the grand list amount. So yeah, it'll probably be about 100,000.
I wholeheartedly will love to see that, because when the old pool years ago gave out, it was boom. I mean, we let it go, and what I see happening, it's harder on the taxpayers if we haven't set aside money gradually.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Yep. So, I don't need, a vote or anything like that, but just so long as people aren't, throwing things at me, this is where I'll go. I'll start down this road. I will tell you that when we talk about capital planning, there's not going to be enough money in the capital plan to do some of the things that I'm going to be foreshadowing in the budget process, just to let people know. I mean, things like the ADL roof was put on 20 years ago. It's about 20 years is what it's worth. So, I mean, at some point, we're going to have to start dealing with things like ADL roof. ADL still has steam heat, converting that to hot water instead of steam. There's some things that we may want to bring out as part of the budget briefing, not to tackle in FY15, but to plant the seed with people so that they can expect, hey, we may need to do a bond at some point, And it's not, it'll be a big number, but it'll be something that we can have annual amounts for long-term debt, get a bond, get a long-term debt to cover it. And maybe we can bring that on board at the same time that we're getting rid of some long-term debt, like the ADL roof project will be paid off in 2 years. Might be a good time to get another bond to go do some more things, some major infrastructure things that we have to do. So we'll talk more about that, but nothing to scare you for FY15, but something I think we should start thinking about what the capital plan can't really manage.
There was a discussion you were having when we were late into the budget season, Dave, that I remember saying this is more appropriate for the beginning of next year's budget season. Do you remember what that?
And I'm already starting to make that change.
Okay.
What Dave brought up was there's some line items in the budget that almost sound more like maintenance, like recurring requirements, as opposed to projects, like a capital project. And some of those things, I've already been talking to Bruce, we're going to take some of those out, like doors, instead of $5,000 a year for doors. Well, replacing doors is a maintenance issue. the reason why I was in the capital plan was because in some cases, we would save money up for a few years and then do a bunch of stuff, which we wouldn't want to put, if we needed $20,000 for doors and we had $5,000 worth of room in the capital plan for 4 years, then we could do that and then buy $20,000 worth of doors without a big hit to the budget. But we are being mindful of that as we're building this year's capital plan. Like security cameras, we'll probably take that kind of stuff out and put it in the general fund budget because it's more routine. Unless it's something that we need to collect money out for over a period of time, we're going to take it out of the capital plan.
Okay. So you remember and you're on it.
I remember and I'm on it.
Thank God.
The roof.
So I remember.
If we have a roof bond coming due, ending in a couple of years, I'd really like to encourage to have in the budget to start taking whatever you pay per year for that bond, start putting away in the capital plan. I mean, taking bonds out, some years it's only, you get lucky, it might only cost you 2 or 3% to borrow the money, but you could get hit bad and you could cost you 5, 6, 7% if interest rates go way up. So to me, it's like we know where the money's going to have to. We don't have to spend the money, and why stop paying a bond for 2 years just so so you can pay 3% or 4% later? I don't like taking bonds out. Unfortunately, they're necessary sometimes, but we know this is coming down. I'd love to see us, get the community behind it and saying, we're going to spend this money. You can spend that money plus 3%, or you can spend just this money and start saving for it now. And that's a hard pill for people to swallow sometimes, but they're going to spend the money. It's just a question whether you do it as a bond or you save it up. And, it's like cringe when you hear another bond. Let's start planning. And it's hard. It's especially when you're already behind the 8 ball. So you're trying to pay off a bond and save at the same time. That's tough.
And the one thing
sounds like Dave and Grant. It sounds like a little article in the Essex Reporter where the superintendents or there's a piece that's done to start conversation now to get the community aware of what's coming up.
Yeah, and I thought maybe what we could do is go through the budget process and see what, vet all the items that we're thinking about and put it out there to at least get some initial visibility and then maybe start following it up on the communications path. And what I don't want to do is I don't want to pay off a bond and go 1 year with this level of funding or budget and then introduce a new bond and bring it back up again. So I want to try to keep it level. That's why I want to make sure that if we bring something on board, it's as this one goes away, the new one comes in, so it's a level, it doesn't hurt as much. And yeah, I don't like doing bonds either, but the only problem is in order to save up money and then get the job done, if you do a bond, you can get the bond and have the work done now and then pay for it, as opposed to if we collect it. It's gonna be,
And you're already in the bond game.
Yeah.
So now you're trying to get out of the bond game and save at the same time. It's a double hit.
Yes.
But the problem is, Dave, when you put off those construction, which I've seen in the past, if we have to save up for 3 or 4 years to do a project, the construction costs
go up.
never decline. So
Correct.
I'd rather, sometimes you may need to do a bond, get it in there for a certain percentage interest rate and at the construction costs, and you might save the taxpayers money in the long run.
Oh, right. Well, like the roof bond, if it ends and we can get 2 more years out of the roof, well, let's keep collecting that money. So when we do have to build, repair the roof, maybe we have 10% of it. So
2 years less than you have to request.
You're slowly gaining, right? It might take 100 years, but it took us 100 years to get into this mess. It's like, it's loans. It's,
Are you looking, is there any feedback? Is it possible to give some feedback to Grant? It just.
Sure.
What I was thinking of after I heard tonight Judy's presentation, Tom's and the staff, if we go into this budget season and there are items related to the requirements and the federal regs, is there a possibility of separating it out, not out of the budget, but separating it out as this is the effect of these items so that we have kind of a list or an idea to give to the public? Or is it not gonna be clear cut enough for that?
I don't know that, I don't think I would be armed to be able to do that.
I think it'll be easier at the high school level because it'll be more specific.
Just for education quality standards, but I mean, there's, with next generation science standards and Common Core, those things coming out. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Deb and I are going to be meeting with principals to talk about, like scheduling, and what can we do to make sure that we're staffed to allow some flexibility. We all know it's an issue. We all know it's a problem. The problem is trying to figure out a way to fix it. So at least we're going to have that conversation about what can we do, what can we try to do a little differently. But it's difficult. Whenever you're dealing with time, too, time is so hard to quantify. How much time does this person need versus that person? How much time does this school need versus that school? How much time is already there? So I don't know. I think the best I'll be able to do is if we come up with proposals to make something better, then I should be able to tell you what we're budgeting for that. If we say, well, with a 0.25 FTE, we might be able to, do something to make this happen at this school. That's certainly what I can do. But
Not to separate it out for us to vote on, but just so that it's very clear to the public, if it's possible. I just think the more info we give them, because if you do, it sounds like we're going to be seeing an increase. I won't know till I see the budget, but I think what's laid out for us is we're possibly seeing an increase. And I just think the more that the public has for information, they get behind it.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Thank you, Grant.
All right, thank you.
Let's move on to proposed calendar 2.0 conversation.
I can do this really quickly to capture some time. I have my whole I know
Track
mine too.
record.
It was an interesting experience to see what change and how it's received by a region and communicated and all those elements rolled out. This is an article that Emerson Lynn wrote with respect to the forums and trying to call people out. This was in the St. Albans Messenger, and I think he did a really good job of just capturing the need. So I just thought it'd be something that you might want to keep in your records when talking to people. As you remember, as a board, I've talked to you about Calendar 2.0 now on several occasions just to keep you apprised of the proposal, some of the thinking behind it. That was good work to have you informed. Never asked you to say I support or don't support it. It wasn't about the support of a proposal, but rather the context behind why we were asking for time in the calendar to be reconsidered. So I briefly wrote down my top 10 lessons learned from the Calendar 2.0 experience. This probably could be a comedy, but what I think has happened is that we've begun a regional conversation that has awakened a sleeping giant. And our communities, about time and calendar and schedule, they didn't have an opportunity to really talk about those issues at the forums nor online because it became a two-camp strategy of opponents or proponents of it, unfortunately. But at least we've begun the conversation, and now the coalition that was not in support of moving forward with the proposal has asked to meet with some of the regional superintendents to say, well, maybe we didn't understand enough the context. So now that sort of that emotional piece, I'm not saying has subsided, but people are starting now to try to wrap their heads around the context of it a little bit. So now coming back in as a group of regional superintendents and talk about what the intent was behind it, to be able to create more of a context for it, I hope is the next step forward in talking about the needs of today's educators and students and families. This was a first. This is the first regional superintendents have ever, first time regional superintendents have made a regional proposal to advocate for learning to be the constant and time to be the variable. So we've talked about this for years. It's our first time we came out with a proposal. Maybe that was a mistake. Maybe we should have come out with the need. The problem with that was, if we come out with a need, like, would you like to come and talk about quality education, which we've had reports on as well, oftentimes parents can't attend. So by developing a proposal, I think that struck a sense of urgency for some families, and that created the energy to get involved in the conversation. It was one of those learning moments I had of they won't see it and they won't believe it until they see it. So I was stuck in that place of, well, if we're going to talk about this, they won't believe it until they can see how it could look differently. But what I've learned is they won't see it until they believe it. And until they believe that there's a need for the change, then they won't be able to see what we're trying to do. So that was my personal big takeaway from the experience. But I have to say, it felt good to look at Michael smiling at me and Jen's eyes when 450 people were in the cafeteria, and the whole structure of the forum fell apart because of the number, and what we were planning to do through engagement couldn't happen because we couldn't even move, let alone create an engaging opportunity. So it became more a open mic night, and it was an opportunity to really hear the vent-up concerns people had about the calendar. It was the first time we've ever had our first attempt at a regional electronic communication, our blog post. And I think we haven't had this regional conversation before electronically, and I think our information got out about what we were trying to do, and then the message was changed via the media as far as shortening summer vacation, and that became the tagline, which put us into a defensive posture from that point on. So, the first time you try to do something, it's not always perfect. So our electronic communication and our first proposal definitely were filled with some emotional responses. The intention was to post information electronically about the proposal and then develop engagement opportunities. People were upset that we didn't engage first and then create a proposal. So that might have been a misstep as well, and we're more than willing to take responsibility for any missteps, but our intention is still important that we carry forward with. Our first regional engagement opportunity was the regional forum, the Partner Summit Forum, and 64 people came out on a really hot day in July and talked about how they could provide programs and enrichment opportunities for students. And so there's nothing to be lost there because there were many new relationships established. So I think of that as still a big win for us and something to continue to build. The planning began around hosting the 4 regional engagement opportunities, where we would have 6 to 8 superintendents at each one of those forums, which again is the first time you've seen 8 superintendents lined up to listen. And I think we did demonstrate good listening to parents, and we've taken all the information generated from the forums and the blog and we're putting that qualitative data into a means of being able to see what the major themes are and how to plan moving forward. Regional student voice was sought after through the VIC, the Vermont Interscholastic Council. The students gave us some great feedback. They're the ones who suggested the side-by-side view, and they attended the forums and spoke on some of the needs that they have as students. And so the fact that we involved students and created an opportunity for student voice in the process is another win that I hope those students will continue to express their needs. I think we're beginning to develop a conversation of school requirements that ensure all students will achieve the most rigorous standards in history and prepare all students for life, college, and career, and that all means all. I think the most distressing part of the calendar conversation was people were talking about segments of students, and it wasn't about those students that were struggling or any specific student group. It was about all, and all means all. The attention became rooted in logistics rather than in the context, which we're taking full responsibility for poorly developing the context. And in the end, we think of this as just the beginning of this conversation, that we're going to be resilient and to continue to involve families and continue to explore different models. I felt especially thankful to the educational leadership team that had advised me this summer to meet with every faculty, and I did in the month of September. Sent them an opportunity to provide feedback via Google Doc, which I sent out in the weekly last week for them to see what their thoughts were. Sent out blank calendars inviting them to suggest ways to shape the time differently. And I've been thankful for the way the leadership team looked at the calendar and talked about how we could look at professional development during those weeks, coined intercessions, and have consecutive days in a timely, responsive way. So I think the challenge now is and this was a challenge right from the beginning, it's a regional construct, but it's informed locally. So we have to have the framework before we can inform it locally. And I think the conversation now will revert back to the local conversation about need, and we'll bring it back through that lens is the approach. So it's been a tough few months, pretty time consuming. I started to really understand capacity issues after my executive assistant moved on to another position. So when all of us as superintendents, our capacity is challenged. It's hard to have everybody talking to the boards, talking to their faculties, meeting with PTO. I was invited to Summit PTO, and it was a group of parents there, and there must have been 30 parents that came out, said, we would love to continue conversations with you about this. So I said, well, invite me back anytime. I'd be happy to invite other PTOs to join you, and I'll remain confident that when people understand the needs, we'll figure it out. You know, I got to remain optimistic. So that's the update. I'll keep you posted if anything develops. And
Well, and speaking of capacity challenge, you also are doing your
one me. Yes. I want and only.
You're two people doing
Yeah.
one person doing two jobs already.
Yeah, so it got a little challenging.
Appreciate you for hanging in there.
Well, it's an important conversation. You heard it tonight, and it was great that you were here in a school and heard it. You know, so you continue to understand it, and I'm thankful for our ETN to capture it, because we can't talk about the need enough.
I have on Friday, there was a HIMSS conference, which is Health Information Management Systems, and there was a speaker there talking about change, and she was a wonderful great speaker, and she used Calendar 2.0 as
What not to do?
an example. I mean, this was in New Hampshire, and the fun, not so funny, but funniest part was she said they were reducing the summers to 4 weeks.
There's so much misinformation
Yeah.
that started
Spreads
to.
across the country.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's in
Amazing.
California, there's no summer vacation at all.
Oh, yeah, and the conversation became year-round schooling. I mean, it just became crazy. So now if we can, revert back to the beginning of the conversation about what it was and not what people thought it was, it'd be a good step in the right direction.
So do you think, so what will happen to the calendar next year? I mean, I know you probably haven't had a chance to even regroup, but do you?
Well, so CVSA, in response to the forums, came out and we had a meeting, and at that meeting determined to take the 2014-2015 implementation date off the table.
Right.
Because I think that was part of the emotional reaction, was too much, too fast, and people, it just really exposed, to be quite honest with you, an inadequate amount of quality childcare available to parents. And so if you take something that's already minimal in nature and try to change that, it just became a tipping point that took things out of balance with the calendar. So we thought if we took the date off, we could take the information for the forums, analyze what we heard, and then come back and look at the regional calendar again. And this week is a classic example of when you looked at the regional proposal, this is the week where we had asked for an intercession. So you have Monday and Tuesday, and then locally, we created a half-day early release on Wednesday, and Thursday's parent-teacher conferences, and Friday's a vacation day. So we were seeing it as a really minor change in just having those 2 days. And that could have been extended professional development time, which is what you were hearing people talk about today. So the need was rooted in time for teachers and students, and we just didn't do it. The message got away from us.
Well, I think too that it's something that came out was the time for the parents. Don't give them, okay, we're doing it next year. Give them 2 years. If you're going to change something, give them 2 years, because people plan a year in advance with the child care,
Right.
with vacations, with multiple things. So I think that would take some of it off as well. Just adequate time to plan.
Yeah, plus, there's gonna be additional costs. I mean, there's no way around that, I mean, whatever it is, but,
That infuriated.
So, we need that for the budget cycle, right? If we're gonna implement this next year, will we have the cost needed by January? Probably not, so. But by saying it was next year, I think you got everybody's attention. If you'd said 2 years, that's 2 years from now, we'll worry about that next year. So, that's one good thing that probably came out of it, was I think you got everybody's attention real quickly. It's like, what?
Yeah.
I mean, it's good. I was, there's issues about it and everything, but I was happy to see, 500 people there. It was like, I was amazed.
I was
I got to the
too.
parking lot. I was like, oh, there must be a sporting event going on or something.
I know. I was really thankful, and I was thankful for the woman. I'm not sure what school board she was representing, but she was saying, we have all these meetings. Where are you? Come to our meetings. Even when we bake cookies, nobody comes. And so that's, we have to think about engagement. I mean, people don't come to school board. It's not really a meeting. It's not really an opportunity to engage. It's a meeting in public of the board.
Right.
But what does engagement look like, where you could talk about education quality standards and Common Core state standards and assessments, and how do we build that understanding of the changes?
Well, and, when you had proposed it to us at our last meeting, and we had 2 people show up, and Jean was there, and even just to get their feedback, you do learn so much from
absolutely.
that. So it is a time for people to come and voice their opinion there too.
Yeah, that was great, and we're reflecting and learning what needs are, and there's so many competing goods. It's going to be hard, but I think you're right. Pushing it out will help people be more planful, and that's always a good thing.
Start the whispers about more school days.
I know.
That's why I was.
Longest
Oh,
I know.
that's why I was like. All right, so we're gonna go to the consent agenda and then do the other two because we're gonna lose. Denise has to leave 15 minutes ago. So on the consent agenda is approving the warrants and approving the meeting minutes of 8:19 and 9:10. Do I have a?
I'll make a motion that we approve the warrants and approve the meeting minutes of 8:19 and 9:10.
Do we have a second? Dave, second. Any discussion? Second. Dave.
David.
Sorry. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Consent agenda motion passes 5-0. Thanks, Denise. Sorry about that. Okay, CCSU board update.
Real quick, a couple things. We had our budget discussion similar to what Grant had with us tonight. This was from the SU perspective. One thing that I remember from that was distinctive was we had a little bit of a discussion about what to do with the, I guess, some funds from losing the TAP program leaving. And while it wasn't decided of any specific thing, we just kind of decided that we would use those funds for any kind of one-time purchases so that it wouldn't create any kind of a long-term, budget effect.
I got it.
We also continued the Act 153 discussion. We had the waiver, or we had the policy proposal, which was shot down. We're looking at requesting a waiver, but before we're going to request any kind of waiver, we've asked for what are the conditions that need to be met for a waiver to even be approved. So, and that's something we're waiting on. The school climate survey is going to be conducted in the spring instead of the fall.
And hopefully everybody saw their email today on the superintendent search forum. Tomorrow night is the
right. And then
forum for the community.
Right, for the superintendent search, setting up I guess we basically gave the executive committee the authorization to make procedural decisions in the superintendent search process until the search advisory committee becomes active. And after a little bit of discussion, I think we decided that it's going to be consist of something like 3 faculty members, 3 or 4 administrative staff, 3 parents, community members, and at least 1 high school student. And the timeline was to have that identified by the end of this month.
Yep, and we put that out on Front Porch Forum. We emailed it. We were too late pulling an email list from the parent portal. But lesson learned on that.
Right.
As far as the climate survey goes, are we continuing the same company, the same test thing?
Yes.
Okay.
I apologize. I don't remember the specific. There was a discussion basically about I think as far as staff goes, as far as you do it for one of the schools. You don't try, if you work at multiple schools, you don't do the survey for multiple schools. You just do it for one of them. Either whatever one is primary for you, or just pick one if you're spread evenly.
Well, an interesting thing that came out when we met here for the Hiawatha climate discussion as parents, some parents wanted to know who hadn't taken the test, what were the questions. So we tried to get them they said, no, you can't get them. Once it's off the table, you can't get a copy of it legally. So we thought that was interesting. So people might want to know to take it and see what the questions are.
And that could be something that in communications we can work on how to get the information out even more, to a broader spectrum of folks, and make sure more people get the word as far as when the survey is being conducted and
And I think it was
and again, the
portrayed.
significance of it.
Well, I think they portrayed it as a 20-minute, it would take 20 minutes. It doesn't take nearly that long. So I think if it was, take this quick survey, then maybe more people would do it, because they did have little minis out for people during conference time, which I thought was great, because the parents could just stop right at the table and do that.
And report from the board task teams. First up, communications, that's you also.
That's me also.
And we had those meeting notes in our org notes, so hopefully everybody read those.
Right.
That was going to be my speech. To make it
Okay,
really
there you
short.
go.
He said the communication minutes are in there.
There you go.
Long and short of it is, we're looking at board member training.
Good thing. Policy?
We are finishing up B20, the board staff communications. We're beginning our work on JIE wellness policy. We're getting input from the coordinated school health team, and we'll be going back and forth with them through Amy Cole.
And when it comes to policy, it seems often that, we go there and represent our view and come back and report to you on what the committee came with. If you know where we're doing a policy, feel free to either say something here or send us an email so your view is represented. I can represent your view as well as mine. Well, I think two opinions on the same matter, right? So.
And we have a meeting coming up this Wednesday at 6 at the central office.
Good to know. Negotiations is, I think, our first meeting's very soon. And we need to confirm our committee members, I guess, at this level, which.
Right, that was my alibi. I forgot to mention that, just to ask about the negotiations. When we were asked about that at the SU, I said it was going to be Dave and I, because I thought you had asked to drop off that. I know you would.
That's fine. I know last time you tried to get off, but it was kind of so late in the process, I think.
Right. Do you have time to go to those meetings?
Yeah.
Because it's important.
If you want it, I want it.
Okay.
Because I think we're going to start.
They're going to start in November.
Yeah.
They're starting earlier, I think.
So it's David and Michael.
Yep.
Got it. Thank you for that. I think it's November 6th was the first meeting.
And I think someone's trying to get Leaders at Work reinstated. I was not at that CCSU meeting, but I will have something to say about that the next time, because I think we all have enough going on this
What do they want
year.
to do with?
They want us to have further work on the superintendent evaluation process, right? Is that?
That's what they talked about at the SU.
That's what I
meeting.
heard.
They do not like the process?
I
Talked
think
about it a
they
bit in
like
communications.
Yeah,
Actually, I thought.
I think they like the process.
It was Mark and Jack telling me.
I think that they, I don't know what they think.
Okay, well,
they're
we'll
both in
find out more about
Well,
that.
they're both
at
in
the next
communications, so that's
Yeah.
why I'm thinking. I thought it was in communications that the discussion was actually.
Oh, well, maybe it was,
More help.
because I'm not at that.
But Mark's coming off of
So,
communications.
I'm opposing that one.
I won't be confused on that one anymore.
Okay, future agenda items. I have school security, that discussion. I think that's definitely, I don't know if we want to have Bill Aware or.
Let me talk with Grant and Paul, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
But school security will be a future agenda topic.
Do we need to include EJRP in any of that
I think they should be.
with security?
Right, sure. Well, we just installed a camera.
Yeah.
As it relates to being in schools, you mean, like those kids, or you're talking about at EJRP? I mean, by virtue of their business, they have people coming in all the time. So
Sure.
I can understand if you're saying like while they're in schools.
I guess I was initially thinking just because that's another piece that we oversee, and I see that security, there's got to be some overlap in those kinds of things. And so I don't know how it relates, and so I'm just asking.
Well, it makes sense, because if they're here in the school.
Does it make sense to have that as
after
part of
school,
the
Are the doors going to be locked
conversation?
and someone going to be manning them, or are we letting the doors open at that point?
But that's
So
still
it's the
school,
village
that's
kids.
still school.
So it's the village kids,
Yeah.
EJRP relationship,
Yeah.
which is what Grant was asking. So
I think so.
that's the relationship, okay.
And are we going to get any input from the safety council?
We have some input from last, so I went through, I was trying to search the minutes, which if we ever redo that website again, it'd be nice to have searchable agendas. Because I went through every agenda since 2009. So obviously we have the ones from March or February from that forum that we had.
Right.
But I could never find where the discussion, I know we had a discussion as a board.
Yes.
But I could not find it.
You couldn't find that in
No.
the minutes? Okay.
So,
I'll look
but
at
it is possible, like I said, I was at work and I was going through everyone. Shh, don't tell work. But, so maybe we can have a recap of
that discussion. See if it's
as well
still-
as maybe a reminder of the community forum, maybe if it's just, although that was more what we focus on and what we do.
Now, we don't meet in November, we meet in
Right,
December.
December.
So will there be budget,
Yes.
further budget things that are brought to us in December?
Will we have the tax basis back by then? Is that what it is?
Not so much.
I don't think we usually do. I mean, I might be able to put some stuff in your update on tax rates or things that come out, but I'll have to look back to see if we actually have a conversation. Because at that time, I'm usually entrenched in, I think,
The other ones, yeah, I don't think we usually do that.
I'll take a look at last year's.
Is the next meeting at ADO?
Yes, I believe the next meeting's at ADL.
So what I learned tonight is, really giving 30 minutes.
Yeah, I made myself a note to
Yeah.
call Lori and ask how much time she would need
Yeah.
versus guessing. Sorry about that.
So,
Learning lessons along the way.
yeah, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I think it's important that we spent the time
Yes.
to listen
Oh,
to
yeah, I
Tom
was
and
not
the
gonna, I
teachers.
was not gonna
That's
cut
why
anyone off.
Right.
We're
Yeah.
here, and I think that was valuable for
Yeah.
all of us to hear.
Yeah, hopefully nobody minded, but.
No, if there's
It's not cutting
anything though specific you'd like her to speak about, last time I remember the students were there and did a great job showing us about how they were tracking their assessment information and preparing for student-led conferences and how they were using technology. If there's something specific you're looking for, the use of minis.
I won't be able to be there, to let you know. I can't get off of work to be there in December. It's our inventory, and it's the day after inventory where we have to adjust everything. So, but one of the things, if I was there, I would like to have seen how, and maybe that's something that can be on our agenda, I'd like to see how the money we put into technology has worked out. Because I heard at ADL open house, the open houses are great because I learned, and I heard the word Chromebooks.
Yeah.
Okay, and I thought we were talking something else at budget time, and all of a sudden I hear Chromebooks. I'm not a techie, so it threw me for a loop, like, what are we doing? Why did we do this and not another route, you know? So,
Yeah. So, how technology is being used with
Yeah.
students
and how much further do we need to go? It's a nice conversation before we get into the meat of budget, I think.
I also like to hear, it's great to have the kids there and showing us things. I always love that part. But I also like to hear, like what Tom did today with the struggles, what is going on in the school, in this school, with behavior, with time for your teachers, that sort of thing. So, because we can't do anything to help unless we know what's going on. So I like to hear anything like that as well.
If I could just comment that, we do a lot of wonderful things here at Hiawatha. We have been for years. And I think all of us are incredibly proud of how we do work so hard to support kids. But, I also want to be realistic. And I don't want anyone, I don't want our board members or parents or community members to think that this is an easy body of work. We're trying to manage a lot of things. We appreciate the resources that we do receive through the budgeting process and through our taxpayer support. But fundamentally, our public schools are different. They're very different. I would say they're different just in the last
past 5 years, certainly within a decade. Certainly when a lot of our parents were at school, or we were at school. And you know, Marla, you talked earlier about the communication piece, and I think the more that we can do in a reasonable way, a sensible way, to help all of our constituents understand what these struggles are like nowadays, I think it bodes well for everyone. The different calendar conversation that Judy talked about, scheduling, I refer to supporting our budget, which is what one of the taxpayers do each year. Public schools is very, very different now compared to what I think most of us have come to know.
I think public schools are responsible for doing a lot more. Every year there seems to be something else expected of a public school. And as we add younger students, the 3 and 4 year, it's almost like we have to have the village kids after school. I mean, we're trying to provide daycare through Essex Junction Recreation. We're trying to figure out the behavioral issues. You know, how do you get the parents involved with the behavioral issues? So I look at it, what can I do as a board to help get that conversation going? Because some of the problems that are in the schools, I don't think are just time. I think it's a matter of a strategy of getting the principals and staff help with the parents on board.
Right, because no one can do it alone. We all have to work together, and we need to know what's going on in order to do that.
Yeah. So I don't know if we're needed at PTO meetings to help discuss things or be there, you know. I don't know what the communication could be, but.
I'd also like, there's been a lot going on with bullying lately, so if she has anything to say about that, how the situation,
With who?
with bullying.
Oh, yes.
Given
ADL.
a lot of.
I'm amazed
Maybe
at
it's a
how
good time
young
to
it's
check in
happened.
on.
Okay, got it.
I'm amazed at how young the bullying happens.
Yep.
Well, and they have those private bullying boxes to report out, and I wonder if they're being used or not.
All right. If you think of anything else, let me know. It's 6:30. I'm going to, I always forget. Do I need a motion to move into executive session?
Anytime.
Yes, I move that we go into executive session at 6:30 to discuss collective bargaining.
Motion by Marla. Second?
I'll second.
Second by Jen. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. We're moving into executive session. Thank you, RETS.